Doing something a little bit different today. I'm going to be making a final Peach and Daisy matchup chart because I think there's a lot of really bad and misleading Daisy matchup charts out there. Some Peach players are really optimistic with the character, a lot are really pessimistic, but I want to give you a full scope of how a lot of her matchups work. I've played a high level rep of every character. I've grinded pretty much every matchup as you've probably seen from the VOD reviews. I know a lot about how to fight these characters. So I definitely have a good scope. I'm going to keep this as unbiased as possible. We're not going to be taking account of the online though, because Peach Online is a real. You're playing the game on very hard mode if you're doing that. So this takes offline into account. But yeah, hopefully I can get this all done in one take. It's just easier for my computer to deal with and for me to edit. So without further ado, let's kind of get right into it. So if we look to the side here, winning, Peach is a really weird character because she's a character that has really bad flaws, but has so much versatility with all of her moves to where she kind of her flaws make it to where she kind of struggles against certain characters under her, but she has so much versatility and so many good things about herself that she doesn't really lose any matchup -2. So I kind of wanted to put it like this rather than +1, +2, because Peach doesn't really invalidate any character super duper hard because she's just too slow and her neutral's not really oppressive enough. Like say Belmont, for example, where you just completely shut down characters. But she doesn't have enough flaws and she has enough versatility to where she can pretty much beat her worst matchup, and it's like -1. It's super doable. This character is super consistent if you know what you're doing. We've seen this throughout Ultimate and other games too. Peach is just a fantastic character, but there's a few awkward matchups she runs into because they take advantage of her flaws super well. So let's get into the obvious first. I think Peach beats all the heavies except for like two, maybe. So let's get all the standard heavies, Bowser, Incineroar, DK. Let's explain those first. What you need to have a good matchup versus Peach. Let me look over here because there's so many characters in this game. Ganon is definitely another one. I think, oh yeah, K. Rool. K. Rool's somewhere over here. If I ever miss any, I'll probably just go back. We'll get through all of them eventually. But yeah, heavies. The thing about heavies versus Peach is you need to be a fast character in order to punish Peach's turnip pulls. And if you can't do that, Peach can kind of pull turnip for free on you. And Peach with a turnip is extremely scary to fight, and she's like a top tier at that point. It's like fighting Diddy with banana or Rob with gyro. It's just like they control so much space in neutral that it's really hard to not get whiff punish. You have to play so perfectly, or you get to platform camp, which makes your neutral more linear. So it makes Peach's neutral more consistent if she's able to pull a turnip. Another really big thing against all of these characters is Peach doesn't really have to worry about them being heavy because her edge guarding is so good. Because heavies thrive off of the fact that you can't really kill them in neutral. They live forever and then they kill you with rage. But Peach can kind of skip that by just comboing you with her great damage output and then getting you off stage. And then you're in a 50-50 scenario where you can get edge guarded. And even if you escape that, you're a big character that's really slow in the air. And it's really hard to escape ledge because you're a big character with slow airspeed. You need to be fast in the air because being able to jump over Peach's ledge traps is a huge deal, and none of these characters can do that. As for character specifics, Bowser this is one of his worst matchups for sure. The big reason is he's probably the character that gets edge guarded the hardest by turnips. Peach turnips just destroy this character off stage. If Bowser ever doesn't have a jump, you have to mess up for him to not make it back. But if you're really clean with your edge guards, then Bowser really struggles. Even in neutral, Float is really good at kind of maneuvering around Bowser's out of shield options, which he really wants to hit you with, as well as Flame Breath. So you can kind of deny two of his specials with just Float alone and make stuff like fair anti-airs very predictable. And if Bowser ever gets hit, he just gets comboed and edge guarded. Can't really escape ledge. All Bowser really has is his advantage state in this matchup. If you're not playing careful against heavies, advantage state, they can kill you early with like smash attacks. They can juggle Peach pretty well. But if you're playing disadvantage very reserved and very patient, then it's really hard for them to kill you. Especially Peach with the lead, it's going to be hard to kill Peach if you're slow. Bowser is not slow, but like Peach can just maneuver around Bowser pretty well. Ganon, the better I get at the game, the more I realize you don't really have to respect a lot of Ganon's options. He's another slow character with poor neutral. Terms beat Wizard Kick. And another fun fact is Ganon likes to do side B into F tilt, but Peach's like tech animation when she's on the ground doesn't get hit by F tilt. So he can't even do that. And it's the same story as Bowser, where he just gets comboed to death. I think Ganon is like the character where Peach combos work the best on. He just gets comboed, he gets edge guarded. So having a bad recovery like that means there's always a comeback mechanic against you. In neutral, Peach can always play at a range against Ganon to where you can react to what he does, but he can't really react to what you do. He has good anti-airs, so you can't really be in the air too much because his aerials are actually quite good against Peach. And his dash attack's pretty good at catching landings. So it's another matchup where you have to play disadvantage patient and don't overextend. But yeah, the better you get at the game and the more you play confident against heavies, and Ganon especially, the better you'll get versus him. Because you can just always hit him and kill him. Even if you're like 999%, if you hit Ganon once, he could just blow up. So it's for sure a winning matchup. Incineroar is kind of the same case where Float kind of avoids side B. You can bait out Incineroar's specials pretty well. He gets comboed pretty hard. You can't really spam turnips in neutral versus him because of revenge, but it's just so hard for Incineroar to hit you if you're choosing the right movement options. You don't want to box with him up close too much because he actually has good frame data, and he also has really, really, really good juggle tools versus Peach, surprisingly. So you have to respect his juggling, but again, you can always just hit him, kill him, struggles off ledge. If you know how to edgeguard Incineroar, it's just over. It's definitely doable. Another thing I want to mention that I'll mention with certain other characters like the Shotos is stuff like back air plus Z drop becomes insanely scary when Peach has the lead because it makes walling and pressuring with back air even better because if I'm holding turnip, right, because it's much easier to pull turnip in these heavy matchups, then I can kind of just use back air as a whiff punish and a threatening tool. And if I get it, I can 0 to death you, realistically, because you're so big. But yeah, Incineroar just advantage state, especially juggling, is pretty good against Peach. But if you're playing patient and using the right movement options and holding turnip, then it's pretty hard. The key to this matchup is to bait his specials. Like his counter, his side B, his neutral B. That's how you want to play it. Just focus on avoiding his moves and baiting him. DK is kind of similar, where he has a lot of good juggle tools versus Peach. He can kill you really early if you're not playing patient, but what kind of seals it is edge guarding. He just kind of gets edge guarded for free by Toad if you take his jump away, and he has a lot of blind spots, so DK wants to hit you with the dash attack, but Float kind of just goes over that, and it pretty much just conditions him to go for more back airs and anti-airs versus you, which he doesn't get as much reward off of compared to something like, his dash attack or dash grab. It's not that bad for DK, honestly, but it's kind of the same story where if you're just playing patient and evasive in neutral and you really wait to get your hit, then it's really hard for DK to hit you. Just focus on avoiding the dash attack is the big thing. And keep it in edge guarding him. Like, you really need to edge guard these characters or else they'll just be a nightmare. K-Rool. K-Rool has a very, very, very obvious blind spot we all know about. You can just float it mid-range over stuff like Crown. You can pressure him with Fair and turnips. Just have to play it patient. And he's really easy to edge guard. Not too much. It's kind of the same thing as the other characters. The only thing you have to really fear is his ledge trapping, where you want to play it very patient. You can't get up attack against good K-Rules. You just have to kind of wait there sometimes against the neutral B, the tornado suck, whatever that thing is called. But yeah, it's the main thing. You can condition him to use aerials super well, and his landings are pretty laggy compared to a lot of other characters in this game. Yeah, you can catch his landings pretty well. Ridley doesn't do that bad, but there's two, maybe three things that are really important in this matchup. The first thing is Peach's float is super good at stalling out Ridley's advantage state. So Ridley wants to kind of juggle you with multiple jumps, up air, back air, kind of edge guarding you, and then using flame breath. But float, you can kind of float a far off stage and kind of just wait him out, and then snap ledge. So that's really good, But also, since Ridley's slow in the air, in neutral it's really hard for him to catch you. And he doesn't have the best out of shield, so you can pressure Ridley's shield pretty well. Another big thing versus heavies I kind of forgot to mention is turnips also condition them into shield, and a lot of heavies are really weak to cross ups, so you can pressure their shield and cross them up, and they can't really do too much. Really is up smash at least, but as long as you're kind of in the front of his shield, you can pressure him for free and catch his landing super well. He can wall you out, so you have to play this matchup very passive and focus on kind of similar to Incineroar, where you're just playing around his burst options out of the corner and specials. But that's really about it. Float is just so hard for Ridley to deal with, and you can always hit him. I will say though, if he recovers low, it's kind of hard to edge guard him. But if he recovers horizontally, like to the side, you can just toad him. So it's all about kind of getting him in that situation where you can use Toad against him off stage, and playing around his side B at ledge is the big thing. Just don't give Ridley like a free F smash read is the big thing. Because Ridley's win condition in this matchup is to kind of read you and kill you with an F smash of 50. That's basically it. One tip is if you ever get skewered, don't immediately roll or get up. It's really big. But yeah, it's super hard for Ridley to just hit you if you're playing passive and conditioning him to shield with your hitboxes and turnips. Alright, so let's go over an even or winning matchup. I think Roy and Chrom goes here for sure. The results don't lie for this matchup. Like before we even get into matchup specifics, one interesting thing about Roy and Chrom is every top or high level Peach player has a positive record on the best Chrom or Roy player in the region, pretty much. So like Razo is like very positive on Cairo. Mute has beaten Goblin like a bunch of times. Samsora used to beat like every Roy. Cola doesn't even bother going Roy against Mute. Sumeki has beaten Hikaru. And yeah, there's just a lot of results. I think even Meru has a good record on Flow from Europe. And there's other Peaches I'm forgetting as well. But the results don't lie for this matchup. And the reason is, it's similar to the heavies, right? Where you can always just hit these characters and kill them. But they have a better neutral than compared to the heavies. Because they're fast, they have range. Just really good, decent, good neutral versus Peach. But it's not like Peach doesn't have the tools to deal with them. Ground flow, up air, and down tilt are extremely good in this matchup for stuffing out Croy's approaches. You don't have to force yourself to approach in this matchup, which is a big deal. So you can play it very patient, slow down the game, focus on walling them out with back air, ground flow, up air, and down tilt. If Croy ever jabs, it's kind of a weird thing, but they kind of shift the hurt box a little bit outwards to where you can down tilt them and outrange their jab, kind of. It's kind of weird. But I don't know, if you've ever seen like my Twitter or any videos of Croy before, you can use down tilt against this character pretty well. It also low profiles their nair, and ground flow up air also just walls out their nair. So Peach can wall out Croy somewhat well, even if they are a sword character, which is kind of weird. Another big thing is Peach with a turn up and shield around mid percent is really hard for them to deal with because they don't have any safe pokes besides like crossing you up with a nair or spacing like a fair. But you can kind of shield camp them around mid percent when they get nothing off of grab. But I think the big reason it's here is because you can always just hit them and kill them while also having decent options to wall them out in neutral, which is a big deal. But the ledge trapping is pretty scary, and if they get rage, then it's kind of just over. It's kind of scary because they can kill you really early, so that's why it's not winning. But you can argue winning just because it's similar to the heavies where you can just hit them and kill them. You have a lot of options in neutral. It's just, yeah. They need more hits on you than you do on them, realistically. And you have the edge guarding tools to deal with them. But I'm mainly going to go off of results on this one to put it here. But if you main these characters, there's like no reason to not play the Peach matchup if you're confident. So what's an even matchup? I think Palutena. I think Pal is pretty even. Similar to Croy, this character kind of wants to hit you with a nair and kind of mix up on the ground, and she has good speed. But the thing that makes it even, though, is she has projectiles, and I think a better juggle game, which is a big deal. Both of these characters can mess each other up once they get a hit. Palu juggles Peach pretty hard, keeps Peach in disadvantage with back air. Her up air is just so big. Oh my god. She can two-frame you with down tilt and kind of edge guard you. But you have to really mess up to do that. But you can pressure Palo's shield extremely well. And remember about not being fast, and Palo's not very fast in the air. So if you remember what we were talking about, being slow in the air is not what you want against Peach's pressure. So Palo just can't jump out of there like Croy. So, oh yeah, against Croy, one last thing is you want to cover their jumps when they're at ledge. Just keep that in mind. But yeah, Palu is not very fast in the air, so it's really hard for her to escape the corner against Peach, as long as you're ready for dash attack. If you're playing around the dash attacks against Palu and run up shield out of the corner, you'll do really well. But in neutral, it's a stalemate, where Palu walls Peach out with back air, can use her projectiles, but it's really hard for Palu to just hit Peach if you're playing super grounded with a turnip in hand. Turnip out of shield's extremely broken in this matchup. Palu doesn't want to play the ground game versus Peach that much because you have float cancels, you have better out of shield with Turnip. And I'm going to mention this too, but you can play similar to Diddy Kong in this matchup where you just play very grounded with an item and focus on whiff punishing her and kind of walling out her short hop nairs. Make it as hard as possible for Palu to get her nair started on you. Ground float up air is fantastic in this matchup for walling out nair. Peach's rising back air is really good. As long as you're playing very patient and evasive and focus on really pressuring Palu's shield, then it's really hard for Palu to get much started. You can also cross her up. Palu doesn't have many options versus cross-ups, which is a big deal. So you can kind of do that against her. But I think it's even because both characters just destroy each other once they get a hit. It's really hard to escape disadvantage for both characters. And the neutral's pretty stalemate. It's like nobody can really hit each other until like someone overextends. So it's a really patient matchup. So I think it's even. Because of Palu's projectiles, you have to like do something, unlike Croy. Oh yeah, you can also float under the ledge and nair her in advantage, so you can deal with the recovery somewhat well. But yeah, I think this one's pretty even. It's a really fun matchup. What about an even/losing matchup? Actually, let me get some water because we're going to be here a while. All right. I would say Rob. Rob definitely goes here. Rob is one of these matchups where it's the opposite of heavies. These guys. So he's actually one heavy that does well versus Peach. And that's because it's so hard to kill him. Because if you've seen the Rob Vob review, Rob can just kind of recover high over Peach's ledge traps and land and get out of Peach's juggles with nair. These other heavies can't really get out of up air juggles. They really struggle to land. But Rob's nair can intercept that. So you have to be really precise with when you throw out an up air versus his character because his nair beats it. So he can actually escape Peach's pressure well. And you can't really edgeguard him as easily as, say, Bowser. So it's really hard to kill him. And if Rob is playing really defensive, then it's just super hard to kill him. In neutral, Gyro and Laser are really good at limiting Peach's movement. So that's good. And Rob can kind of just air camp Peach. He has bigger aerials than you. And Rob always can just hit you and kill you. That's kind of just how Rob works. He can edge guard you with laser and his projectiles pretty well. So if you don't have a jump, you're kind of just dead off stage. So it's pretty rough. But yeah, the big thing is Peach just has to hit Rob so many more times than you have to hit Rob. And it's really annoying. But it's not that bad though, because if you ever get Gyro, you can camp in neutral with Gyro. And Rob's, of course, combo food. So you can just like do all the crazy combos on Rob and get away with it. And you can keep him in disadvantage. Peach can pressure Rob at an angle pretty well with like JCFF Nair. And he can't really do. He kind of just has to hold that. You can also cross him up. All the heavy stuff applies, but the reason it's here is because you just have to hit Rob more times than he needs to hit you. He can also 2-frame you with down air, which is annoying. So disadvantage is really scary. But yeah, it's not undoable though. I'd say even/losing matchups. You can argue either, but if you know what you're doing, or if you play it a lot, then it feels more even than it does like losing. On a similar note, I'm going to put Yoshi here. I think Yoshi's pretty similar to Rob, where you just have to hit Yoshi so many more times, and he can recover high over Peach's ledge traps. The neutral's a lot better than Rob, but Yoshi's disadvantage state is a lot better than Rob, I think. You just have to hit him so many more times. It's not the hardest matchup, but it's definitely the most frustrating. because you need to like hit Yoshi a lot of times in neutral, and if you ever get hit, he can just up tilt up air you at 60 and you're dead. And he can go off stage against Peach and go for like a forward air and then get back to stage first because he has better air mobility. And being fast in the air is just like so good against Peach. So you have to play it grounded. You have to play it very, very patient. Play for stage control and do not let Yoshi land. There's two ways you can get kills, like somewhat consistently if the Yoshi's sleeping. And the two main ways I like to do it is reading Yoshi's landing with an up smash. I love doing that. Kills him around 100, no questions asked. Because a lot of Yoshis want to try to land on you with an aerial. And you can just up smash him because Peach's up smash is invincible on her hands. Wonder if we can go to ultimate frame data. Ultimate frame data. Let's go here. But yeah, you can kind of see here where it's kind of just invincible on her hands. So you can use that. Golf Club is also kind of okay in this matchup. But yeah, the fact that Yoshi can do a lot of low committal reads that kill you early is just so frustrating. But you do outrange him in neutral. Fair and back air, super good. It can be kind of hard for Yoshi to get that initial hit on you if you're playing very defensive. And being kind of aggressive with your hitboxes is kind of like the Mario VOD, where we said you don't want to play too passive so he can get his pressure started. But yeah, opt for stage control in this matchup, for sure. What's a losing matchup? I think it should be no surprise to no one that Shulk is Peach's worst matchup. Let's just get it out the way. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, but I'm going to put the timestamps in the description when I'm done with this VOD. But yeah, Shulk is losing, no surprise, but it's not that bad. It's only like a -1. I should just put this at worst because they're still all doable. So Shulk's really interesting because depending on what level you play or where level you are as a Peach player, it feels very different. So mid to low level Peaches are just like, oh my god, he outranges us. Shield art is really annoying, and it's just like that sort of thing. But as you play it more, you realize shield art is kind of the least of your problems. It's still important, but all of other Shulk's arts are a little more annoying for Peach to deal with in different ways. But there's two things that really seal it, I think, that keep it as her worst matchup. For one, Shulk's edge guarding on Peach is extraordinarily good. It's so risky to get back to stage because you can't recover low because he can just smash art forward air and kill you at like 60 or 50 or pretty low percent off stage. So recovering high is pretty risky because Shulk can always just jump art and hit you and you can die. And even if you do, you have to snap ledge, and he can always just reversal you with up B, and you can die. And even if you make it back, then you just have to get past his amazing ledge trapping, because he has better range than you. So it's really obnoxious to get out of disadvantage. Shulk's juggling's not as good as some of these other characters, but he can kill you so early with jump art if you're above him, and he like reads your positioning. In neutral, of course he outranges you, but oh yeah, I forgot. The other reason it's losing is because if he ever gets the lead, he just platform camps you, and Peach is just too slow to really deal with that, and it's just such an uphill battle. You have to outplay him at that point, and it's really difficult trying to fight Shulk with the lead. He just plays super defensive, and it's like, oh my god. But yeah, and also, I just want to say, like, Smash Art is really broken against Peach. It's broken in general, but the main thing is like you can be playing the matchup super well, playing patient, using turnips, and then he just gets smash art. He gets a smash art read, and then he just platform camps. So you're always on like a tightrope in this matchup because if you ever mess up, then he just kills you really early and there's platform camp. So this is for sure Peach's losing matchup, but it's not that bad. Shulk has poor frame data and he doesn't have the best out of shield. So Peach's frame data really helps in this matchup for pressuring Shulk up close. Shulk really can't fight Peach up close as long as you play around the up B. And at mid-range, you can always just kind of poke him with turnips, which is really good. You can kind of Gimp Shulk. If you know how to edge guard him, you can get kind of some early cheesy kills. But he can always just jump art over your pressure. He also has shield out of the corner. He has ways to he has like smash art and shield art to escape your combos, so he can limit your advantage state pretty well. So it's kind of similar to the Robin Yoshi, where he needs less hits to kill you because of arts. Buster just like pressures your shield. It's just ugly. And speed art puts you in a guessing game where you have to kind of read the Shulk. You have to wait for him to mess up because he's just way faster than you and has better range, and you can't pull turnip at that point. That's where stuff like dash attack and ground flip back air becomes really good. But Peach's turnips, frame data, and parry punishes especially are really good. You can also combo shield art with down tilt loops, which is pretty good. So if you play Shulk enough, you realize that your character has a lot of combos on shield art. So it ends up becoming not that bad as when you first play it. Grabbing Shulk is pretty good because you can pummel him. But yeah, like I said, you can always just be outplaying Shulk and then he gets smash art and then camps you and it's just like, oh my god. But it's definitely doable. Alright, let's go over some more winning matchups that are not very self-explanatory. I think Mac and Doc are pretty similar. These characters get outranged, but the big thing is you can always just hit them and kill them. These characters can hit you really hard, but if you kind of deny what they want and use your air movement and you can platform camp them, it's really hard for them to deal with. Not much to say, just you can always either like randomly get hit by Mario. Dr. Mario's really good up close tools like his up B or low max like KO punch. But as long as you deny what they want and you play at a range where you can safely react and wall them out and play patient, then it's good. Be sure to bait out the counter from Mac in disadvantage and avoid Dr. Mario's cheese like his down throw down B and be ready for him trying to use down B off stage to recover. But yeah, if your edge guarding's on point, even if you're playing like meh in neutral, as long as you can edge guard them, you'll do fine. Just not great characters. Let's go over... Actually, I just want to go over some more winning matchups. I'm going to call these kind of like fake zoners. I'm going to go over Isabelle, Lucas, Banjo. Let me see. Sword Fighter is another one for sure. Plant. And if I remember any, I'll go over. So these are characters that... So against Peach, you need to be able to do one of two things. You need to be able to fight her up close or camp her. And these characters can't really do that. Like, sure, they can slow down the game to a halt and just camp you, but they don't have the out-of-shield options to really get out of the corner or out of Peach's pressure, and you can kill them off stage. Isabelle has like a blind spot, like, so full hops are really good against her. Back air is just ridiculously good. You can always float down air over the landmine. Ground float down air, which is really weird, but you can do it. You can also just recover high versus her ledge traps. She has a hard time killing you. You can always just shield camp with a turnip. And it's just hard for her to deal with that because she has to overextend on your shield. And of course, you can edge guard her. Unlike Villager, she doesn't have Tree, Lloyd, Axe, or Bowling Ball, which are all like make a world of a difference versus Peach. But Isabelle's just not a great character, honestly. As long as you play it very grounded and slow and patient, and you focus on utilizing back air and turnips, then it's really good. I'll talk more about Villager, but just know Isabelle's just not a fantastic character. If you know what you're doing. If you're confident versus Villager, then Isabelle's kind of just easy, much easier. Lucas, all these characters have blind spots for sure, like diagonally above them, so you can kind of use a lot of full hop movement. Lucas can't really box with Peach super well either. He doesn't have the best out of shield or shield pressure, so you can fight him with the turnip in hand, and even if he wants to camp you with PK Fire, he ends up cornering himself and he has to box with you anyways. His up B is slower to where you can edge guard him with turnips easier than Ness. So yeah, it's just kind of hard for Lucas. I used to play this character, and Lucas just overall is very underwhelming. But it's not terrible for Lucas. It's just like the fact you can't really box with Peach means if you ever end up in the corner, it's just hard to escape Peach's pressure. You're also not very fast either, so you can pull turnips whenever you want. Shield is super good versus Lucas, if I didn't already mention that. But yeah. Banjo, so Banjo you can kind of platform camp him, similar to these other characters. And it's really hard for him to deal with that. He doesn't have the best out of shield or shield pressure. As long as you use the grenades against Banjo and you don't mash into grenades, and you focus on using that angle and playing around his anti-airs and Wonder Wing, you should be fine. Just don't overextend off stage and focus on baiting the Wonder Wing at a disadvantage. It's really important. JCFF Nair is extremely good in this matchup, especially. So yeah, you can always float at a range versus Banjo to where you can kind of move in and out of his anti-airs, and if he ever shoots the grenade, you can float right over it and hit him. So around that mid to close range, I think, is the right spacing. Just don't take Banjo to FD, because you really need the platforms against him. But Banjo, without grenades, if you use float and nair, and sometimes dash attack and play very passive and very patient, use the grenades against him, he's just kind of an incomplete character. Sword Fighter, same thing. Even for a sword character, he's pretty underwhelming, but he slows down the neutral to like a halt, so you have to play super slow. But again, once you get up close, he can't really box with you. It's kind of the same with these other characters. Plant doesn't do that bad because he has decent anti-airs, but I would say if you know the trajectory of how Patui works, then this character becomes way easier to fight. But yeah, you can edge guard him. You can always recover high over the ledge traps. You can camp him. He's a zoner that loses to zoning, so if you ever get the lead, you can just camp, and it's really difficult for him to deal with that. So that kind of goes over these zoners. They're just zoners where they have such an obvious blind spot, similar to K-Rool. I'll put K-Rool kind of right here, where you can always place float there, and it's just easy pressure and conditioning in the matchup. Just always mix up your float heights and opt for more full hop floats versus these characters. Except for Plant. Plant, you want to play more grounded. But yeah, you have to play it pretty patient in neutral versus all these winning matchups, which it feels like it's losing if you try to rush things where you can get hit by like KO Punch or Mario's up smash or like Ridley's F smash or Lucas shenanigans like Zaire or grenades. But if you played it patient and slow and you really play that conditioning game with float, and pressure them up close and keep them in disadvantage, then it's pretty good because Peach just outclasses these characters. Let's go over another even/winning matchup. Oh wait, I forgot to mention Olimar. Olimar's another one where it's the same thing. I think he does a lot better than these characters because he's just a lot better, mainly due to purples. But it's the same thing where Peach's damage output against this matchup specifically makes it really easy to get rid of Pikmin. So ground flow aerials, if he puts a Pikmin on you, you can just get rid of it, or you can pressure him with your hitboxes and get rid of the Pikmin, which not a lot of characters can do, which is very interesting. But Peach's damage output is just good enough to where you can mash on Olimar without purples, and he doesn't have great answers. He doesn't have a great disadvantage state either. Stuff like side B as a mix-up is super good against Olimar because you can just hit him at that angle, but it can spiral out of control for Olimar really quickly if he doesn't have purples. If he has purples, it becomes more complicated to deal with them. You have to play it patient, more grounded, focus on like baiting Pikmin tosses versus him and kind of getting rid of the purples as soon as possible so he can't wall you. But without purples, it's just like you can mash on this character, and it's really hard for him to deal with that. As long as you're playing around the whites and the purples and mixing up how you deal with them, then you should be fine. Yellows also can be pretty good versus Peach at times to like call you out. But as long as you're really confident in your spacing and you pick your spots to overextend versus Olimar and you know his lineup, then it's really hard for him to deal with that. There was like times against Olimar players that were definitely better than me where I was like, wow, they're kind of outplaying me, and then I just kind of hit them once and hit them off stage, and it's really hard for them. It could just snowball so quickly. All right, so let's go to an even/winning matchup here. I think, let's see. I think Wario goes here for sure. So Wario's a character where he wants to kind of camp you out and get waffed, and then kind of go in after he gets waffed, right? But it's really difficult for him to land waft on you because of Peach's ground flow aerials. So Wario has good air mobility, so he can escape Peach's pressure somewhat well, but it's just super hard for him to land a hit if you're playing with a turnip in hand and you're using ground float areas. Most characters don't have the grounded options to kind of play around Wario, because if you're in the air versus Wario, he can kind of come at you with the nair and trade, or get a combo starter. But Peach can just play it grounded. And stuff like back air, nair, and ground float up air are all really good versus Wario. You can kind of edge guard Wario too. If Wario recovers high, you can sometimes use up B or throw turnip at him. And if he goes low, you can use turnip. So it's really good. He can't trade with Peach because Peach has better damage, has good damage output. But yeah, it's just so hard for Wario to get in on you. And again, where he's gonna camp you, it's not like these characters are slow, but he's gonna camp you to where you can always have a turnip in hand. And stuff like back air plus Z drop is true on Wario, so that's really good. But yeah, it's hard to get It's hard to get anything started on Peach if you're playing very evasive and using your hitboxes. But the reason it's not winning is because he can't escape Peach's pressure, because he has good air mobility, he can recover high, and he's a very scary character in his own right, where he could just like hit you and kill you. But yeah, it's just really hard for Wario to approach Peach, and that's why it's here. On a similar note, I'm going to talk about Lucario. Lucario's kind of similar to Wario, where even if he has Aura, he just kind of gets walled out by Peach's back air. And you can also, fun fact, you can get Lucario to mid%, and Lucario wants to do a lot of B reverses. So you can call him out with a ground float up air with a turnip in hand. You can do ground float up air, throw up turnip up B, and it kills him at 70, which is super huge in this matchup. There's also certain combo starters you can fish for around mid to low % that you can 0 to death Lucario. You can also edge guard him too, but it's mainly because you just kind of out button Lucario. As long as you know when to, if you know how to condition kills versus Lucario is the big thing, as well as know if you're confident in your 0 to deaths and combos this Peach and edge guarding him, it should be really good. But yeah, Lucario's scary with Aura, but he just gets walled out. But it's not that bad for him. You just need to get Lucario to like mid% and just not hit him. It's a really big deal. But yeah, you can just outclass Lucario. He doesn't really have buttons. Aura's scary, but mid-range float is super good in this matchup for conditioning, because you can condition Lucario to throw it there, or use a lot more B reverse movement to call out your air movement. So then once you transition to like the mid game, you can call out his jumps and kill him. And then of course you hit him, and then it's really hard for him to get out of your pressure because he gets outranged. But yeah, not bad for Lucario, just he gets outclassed pretty much. Let's see. You just need to know when to hit him and when it's not worth hitting him, basically. Let's go over... Let's go over another even matchup. I think another even matchup is definitely Mario. I think Mario's pretty even. This is a really fun one. So Mario is kind of the opposite of Palu, where you wall him out, but Mario doesn't need to approach due to Fireball, Flood, and he has better mobility than you. But I think another big thing is Mario's combo game is better than yours in this matchup. Because Mario with Rage can grab you and then just 0 to death. Like, I've seen many games, and I've played many games against Mario, where I'm playing really well, and then I can't kill him. And then he grabs me and I die. And it's just, oh my god. But Mario does have decent boxing tools. He doesn't have the tools to really get in on you at mid-range, but up close he has up smash, he has parry, punishes, and back air, which is really good. He can call out Peach's movement pretty well, because he has the mobility to do so. But Peach has bigger hitboxes. It's also really easy to ledge trap Mario, because he doesn't have great burst options to get in on Peach. So, and you can 2-frame him too. He can also kind of edge guard you too, because if you don't have your jump, he can just cape you and flood you, fireball. It's really annoying. So I think it's even, because both characters, it's hard for Mario to escape Peach's advantage state, but Mario can just always hit you and kill you, while the neutral's pretty stalemate. So I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. Let me get some more water. Alright. So many characters. I'm gonna go over some more winning matchups for Peach. I'm gonna call these defensive matchups. I think Bowser Jr., Jigglypuff, Kirby, Brawler definitely loses. Where's Falcon? Falcon is here. I think Kazuya goes here as well, but we'll talk about them in a sec. I will see. Pichu and Pikachu, for sure. And I'll explain these in a bit. I just want to put them all out here because they have similarities. Oh yeah, Zelda's another. Actually, let me talk about Zelda first. So Zelda is another zoner that really struggles versus Peach because she has a blind spot and she can't really box with Peach, so you can keep her in disadvantage pretty well. Zelda's ledge trapping is pretty good versus Peach, but you can always recover high over it. Float, like I said, if you full hop float, her Phantom has a blind spot. She doesn't have her out of shield's okay. Like fair and back air can be scary, but they're really committal. So you can actually bait her out of shield options pretty well, and it's hard for her to escape pressure. I know people like Ven and Mysterica have always like lost versus Peach players, so I'm pretty confident putting her here. She doesn't do bad, but overall, she just like if you play it very patient and you know when to go in and when not to go in versus Phantom, and you know how to pressure her, it's really good. You want to maintain a distance versus her where you can pressure Phantom as well as wall out and space around her approach options with her dash attack in there. So it's really hard for her to box with Peach. Bait Neru's love is another big thing. But yeah, overall, Zelda's just not a fantastic character. You just have to play. It's just annoying because you have to play really patient, and Peach doesn't have the speed to just really mash on Zelda, basically. But yeah, it's for sure winning. What other defensive matchups? Oh yeah, Meta Knight. Meta Knight's here. I think that's all I want to talk about for now. So let's go over these. So all these characters get walled out by Peach pretty well. And I think the big thing is they can't really stop you, besides maybe like Meta Knight, from using air movement at mid-range. Even Meta Knight, you can use it, so never mind that. But yeah, Bowser Jr., ground flow aerials are super good at walling out Clown Car. You can also use ground flow Z-Catch, similar to Rob's Gyro, where you can just pick up the Mecha Koopa. If Bowser Jr. ever recovers low and he up Bs and you throw a turnip, he's dead. It's like a weird thing, that interaction that happens where he just can't recover low versus Peach. It's just an annoying matchup because his fair is pretty good versus Peach. But think of a Sonic, but you don't have to approach at all. And you can play very defensive, float and mid-range, play for center stage. It's just another winning matchup that's just annoying because you have to play it very patient and not overextend. Because his side B is really good off stage. Jigglypuff and Kirby are pretty similar. It's matchups where you want to play super grounded. It's very slow. You use a lot of ground flow aerials to wall them out. Against Puff specifically, one thing I want to mention is avoid using too much ground flow back air, because back air ends up shifting your hair box towards Puff. And yeah, you shift your back air shifts you towards Puff to where you can get hit by stuff like Pound. So instead, you want to focus on using more ground flow up air and fair. Golf Club is surprisingly good in this matchup for catching her landings. It's similar to Yoshi, right? So you can catch her landings with Golf Club pretty well, and she doesn't snap ledge automatically, so you can use that. So that's pretty good. You can wall out Puff with fair, which is alright, and trade with her pretty well. Your turnip's also really good in this matchup, and since you're going to be pulling so many turnips, you have a chance to pull Saturn most of the time, or a Stitch to get shield break set up. So it's kind of just a matchup that's kind of an uphill battle for Puff if you're playing really patient. It's similar to, if you ever want to see like how patient you have to be, watch Melee VODs, where the matchup's way worse for Peach, but Peach's hitbox are a lot better and faster in this game. But yeah, you just use a lot of turnips. You have to position yourself. You have to play more grounded and focus on positioning yourself in the air, which is what I think Melee Peach players do better in this matchup, is knowing how to position yourself in the air to where you're not overextending in the air versus Puff. Because Puff can whiff punish you in the air pretty well. But yeah, stuff like Nair is a good anti-air, even though it's really small, but you can trade with Puff pretty well out of the corner. But yeah, Overall, you just kind of wall puff out pretty well. You just have to play it patient. Kirby's the same thing. You just don't overextend versus his character. You want to. It's kind of like Mario, where you're maintaining a range versus him, where you're kind of playing like a sword character and walling him out, but not overextending to where like stuff like crouch and fair and dash attack. You don't want to be in the air because Kirby's fair is pretty good. It's annoying if you play it if you try to rush things and you try to like not camp Kirby, but if you don't overextend, use ground floor aerials versus Kirby, play it really patient. You can even edge guard Kirby too. Then it's just difficult for him to deal with that. Personally, I would just go to a platform stage and just camp him. Play it slow. Kirby's just not a great character. He doesn't do bad though. So Brawler, Falcon, Meta Knight are kind of similar, where these characters, Peach's defensive game plan is really good. So ground flow back air against Falcon specifically is pretty good. You can trade with these characters pretty well. Floating in mid-range is pretty good against Falcon because you can avoid stuff like burst options. So while you're pressuring Falcon, you can condition burst options pretty well. And if you hold turn up versus these three characters, it's very hard for them to approach. As long as you're moving around and spacing your hitboxes correctly, you don't want to overswing because they can whiff punish you with a combo starter, and it's really hard to get out of disadvantage because you're floaty. But yeah, it's just so hard for them to get a hit. Meta Knight and Falcon, back air plus Z drop works pretty well, so you get rewarded even more for holding turn up in these matchups. And against Meta Knight, just don't play too airborne. I know Razo has like a really positive record on Joseph, so that's why it's another reason it's him winning. But yeah, you want to play him, if you can watch those VODs, you'll see Razo just plays pretty grounded. Uses stuff like down tilt, back air, floating in mid range sometimes to avoid the dash attacks. It's all about not letting Meta Knight dash attack you. And in disadvantage against Falcon, you can edge guard him, which is pretty good. So yeah, it's just kind of rough for Falcon to hit you if you're playing evasive and neutral and spacing your floats in the correct spots and keeping them in disadvantage. It's also hard for him to get out the corner, so majority of the time he's going to use stuff like a burst option out of the corner, which you want to bait. MK's disadvantage is definitely better because it's somewhat hard to edge guard him, but he lacks range and kill power compared to Falcon. Falcon has better kill power for sure, but MK has better edge guarding, so they don't do too bad. But yeah, Meta Knight's a character where like 0 to 30% he's really scary, but past that it's really hard for him to kill you, especially if you know how to SDI the ladders, where it depends on which side of the up air you're on you want to DI. But yeah, overall, Meta Knight's just a pretty inconsistent character, and I think Peach's game plan is more consistent. As long as you're playing Peach like Diddy in this matchup, where you're playing grounded, sometimes floating at mid-range, and then going back to the ground. Because like I've been saying for some of these VOD reviews, is Peach when you're playing grounded doesn't mean you can't use float. You just want to float fast fall, like really fast. You don't want to be in the air too long. So Mii Brawler's kind of the same thing. We'll talk about Fox in a bit, but he doesn't have the options to force you to approach, and he gets edge guarded. So it's kind of a meh character, but he doesn't do too bad. I think Mii Brawler is somewhat underrated. So Kazuya's another character where he can't really stop you from using air movement, which is pretty big. So you can kind of platform camp him and play around his shield with float, and turn up and back air are just really good at walling him out. You know how to play footsies versus this character. It's really hard for him to get much started because your hitboxes are bigger. But yeah, you can definitely air camp Kazuya pretty well. But he can always just hit you and kill you, which is super annoying. But yeah, Kazuya's scary, but Peach can just camp this character pretty well because he's so slow and he lacks range to where you don't really have to interact with them too much. So alright, the rats. I think Peach does pretty well versus the rats. And the big reason is, like, most characters fold versus Pikachu and Pichu, but Peach has the perfect answers to deal with these characters pretty much. Against T-Jolt, specifically, Peach can just use float. So it's kind of similar to Fireball, where if he throws it out, you can float over it and then do a falling aerial. And because you have better range, it's hard for them to just contest that. They have to kind of whiff punish you. And since Pikachu's slow in the air that we've been talking about, it's really hard for him to escape your pressure. So you can kind of ledge trap this character. Ground flow aerials will also clank with T-Jolt, so it gives you another great option versus Pikachu. And Pikachu doesn't want to trade with you either, so it's really good. So yeah, because Pikachu's slower in the air, that really helps because it's harder for him to call you out your air movement. So you can use your air movement in this matchup pretty well, and then kind of force trades versus Pikachu if he ever wants to intercept you. And ground flow aerials and flow also are really good against quick attacks, so we can't just spam that versus you. Turnips are also really good, and you can keep Pikachu in disadvantage, which is a huge plus because most other characters can't do that. So overall, it's not bad for Pikachu. I was thinking of putting it here, but the more I think about it and the more I see it and play it, the more I'm like, yeah, Peach definitely has the tools, but it's not impossible for Pikachu by any means. You just have to play it very patient. And I think most Pikachus aren't that great at the matchup. They have to really camp and play passive. So I think there's more to optimize on their part. But yeah, Peach is also so floaty that some of Pikachu's combos don't really work that well on her. But it's only like a -1 for Pikachu. You could argue it here, but I think overall, Peach has better tools than most of the cast for keeping Pikachu in disadvantage and getting around him in neutral, which is a big deal. Pichu's the same thing, except you just don't have to approach. He is faster, but Peach can force trades way better versus this character. It's just so hard for Pichu to get much started if you're playing defensive, and it can snowball out of control really easily. Because Pikachu doesn't... Both of these characters get 2-framed, but also, you don't have to worry about quick attack versus Pichu because it doesn't have a hitbox. So I'd say it's a little bit easier to like kind of edge guard him too and keep him in disadvantage. But yeah, Pichu's hitboxes are bigger, you can play defensive with a turnip, and you just don't have to approach this character. But you can always just get blown up by these two characters, which is really annoying and scary. But yeah, you can avoid a lot of their stuff in neutral and a lot of their conditioning with float and Peach's bigger hitboxes alone. So I think it's here. You just have more tools against the rats than a lot of the cast, which is so good. Let's go over another winning matchup. I think Ness goes here. Ness is kind of weird because I'm gonna put Pikachu in here because I think these two characters actually do better than a lot of these other ones. But Ness, you're basically both playing the same game, but Peach has bigger hitboxes, so you can kind of space Ness out pretty well. Catches landings. I've seen Ling and Mute play this matchup more and more, and they're just doing really well against players like Send and Syrup and PK Chris and other really good Ness players. It's not that bad for Ness. I think this is another one you can put here if you want, and I wouldn't be mad. But I think Peach's more consistent hitbox. I think Peach's bigger hitboxes are just so good in this matchup. Turnip's also really good because Ness can't absorb them. So you can wall out Ness pretty well. You can also float over PK Fire and SEI out of PK Fire a lot easier than other characters because they're floaty. So that's really helpful. But Ness is pretty scary in his own right because he can juggle Peach pretty well. So like PK Thunder is really annoying. An up air can kill you pretty early, so you kind of have to respect that. But it's just hard for Ness to hit you if you're playing evasive. It's kind of like Palu, where if you're using the right movement options, it's hard for Ness to really hit you with stuff like forward air or PK Fire. The big thing versus Ness is you want to call out his PK Fire and Magnet mix-ups and always be ready for like an aerial from ledge. Also, Ness also struggles to land because he's really floaty, so you can frame trap him with up air pretty easily. But yeah, the best way to describe this matchup is if you're maneuvering around Ness and with the right movement options, it's really hard for him to hit you. You're playing the same game plan where both characters kind of like Ness is also a character that wants to wall you out and use movement mix-ups, but you have bigger hitboxes and more, I think, better burst movement overall compared to Ness, but it's not that bad for him. I think the pits also go here. So remember what we were saying about matchups where back air plus Z-drop is really good? This is another one where in neutral, it's really patient. I think pits are overall just a worse Palu, but they don't do that bad versus Peach. But back air plus Z-drop is true on this character, and it's also a good added shield. So you get rewarded even more for holding turn up against these characters. So that's really good. But yeah, pits versus top tiers, how it normally goes is the pits have to work a lot harder. especially against Peach, because she has better damage output and she can edge guard you. The Pits can also edge guard you, which is a decent thing on their part. But yeah, overall, you just kind of outclass them. You can wall out a lot of their stuff with your bigger hitboxes. If they ever mess up and you get a lead, back air plus Z drop is extremely good versus them because it's true. And you can float around like the side Bs out of the corner, which is pretty good. But yeah, overall just underwhelming. They can also struggle to kill, but I think Peach with the lead in this matchup is really scary for them to do it. You just have to not overextend versus the Pits is the big thing, and you should be fine. It's overall just an easier Palutena. Speaking of easier matchups, I think Mewtwo is just an easier Samus. He doesn't have the Out of Shield, he doesn't have Zair, he doesn't have the ledge trapping, and he's a lot. I think he has a worse disadvantage state overall too. So you can play the matchup similar to Samus. It's not that bad for Mewtwo. I think Mewtwo's anti-airs are okay, but he has the obvious blind spot. Side B is kind of broken in this matchup. It's similar to Olimar, where you can kind of poke at him at that angle, which is really annoying. But yeah, against the charge shot characters, you need to always mix up what you're doing. But overall, it's just like Mewtwo's so big, he has a hard time fighting Peach up close and escaping Peach's pressure. He can edge guard you though, which is annoying. But yeah, you just need to know how to approach Mewtwo and play around his hitboxes is the big thing, and play around Shadow Ball too. But yeah, you can really mash on this character once you get in. You can also cross him up, which is very difficult for him to deal with. Same with the Pits, where all the things you have against like the better versions of these characters you can use on them and then more. So they're winning. In the last one, I'd say Corrin. Although Corrin doesn't do that bad. This is another one you can put here. I think I'm gonna move Mewtwo here. I think these characters you can move here if you wanted to, but I think these characters down here are a little more scary. So Corrin is definitely the easiest sword character for Peach to fight, I think. Corrin can struggle to kill sometimes if you know how to avoid her cheese, and it's just easier to pressure her landings. You can't really juggle her because her nair and her down air can beat it, but overall, I've just seen like Mutex and Oryx kind of just beat Shattuck a few times, and every Corrin I face, I'm like, wow, this is just easier than fighting all the other sword characters as Peach, because stuff like parry punishes are really good, and it's the same as the other heavies, where since she's slow, you can always have a turnip in hand and whiff punish her, which is really good. So yeah, it's not that bad for Corrin though. She can juggle you, but it's just much easier to play around her landings and play around her aerials and pull turnips in this matchup, I think. Can also cross her up. So pretty much all the other advantages that Peach has against Swordies definitely apply here. So yeah, ground flow back air is pretty good versus her, because against her aerials, you can kind of run up ground flow back air and kind of just low profile her aerial and hit her. So she also gets edge guarded. It's not that easy, but if she's far enough off stage, you can use Toad versus her, which is really nice. So yeah, overall, I would put it here, but I think she's just the easiest sword character to fight if you know what you're doing. But she can juggle you, and you just have to avoid getting hit by her aerials. And don't give up too much stage control, because playing around back air in the corner is really annoying. Also, another thing versus Swordies is Turnip Out of Shield opens the door for Turnip Train, and it's super good versus her. Stuff like Palu, Croy, Turnip Train just puts them off stage, and you can die. But yeah, she's slow enough. Since she's a slow sword character, it really helps Peach out, I think. Let me get another water. So those are the winning matchups. Kind of noticing a trend where if you're slow versus Peach, she can kind of get away with a lot more. But as we're going to go down here, you'll kind of see some more trends. So let's go over some even/winning matchups. One of them that definitely goes here is King Dedede. Another heavy that does decent versus Peach. So he's a sword character that's a heavy. He's a heavy with a disjoint. And he has projectiles with Gordo that kind of force you to approach. But I think the big thing why it's not winning is because you can't really edge guard him. So in this matchup, what ends up happening is you're playing Dedede, you're hitting him, And then he gets to like kill percent, and you just can't kill him. It's like Yoshi, where you just can't kill this character sometimes. But after playing this matchup a lot, I kind of realized Nair is really good versus Dedede. Nair hits Gordo back because I don't know, for some reason the shape that Nair is, it just kind of hits Gordo back pretty well. So that's important because it's a reliable way to hit Gordo back in neutral and off ledge. So you can kind of rise off ledge with Nair and hit it back. Let me see if I can find a video. YouTube, where is it? Ling versus Dedede. We'll find it eventually, y'all. I think this is important to talk about in this matchup. Can Dedede? Where'd it go? I'll find it eventually. I forgot the name of that Dedede player. We will find this. Let me go to the doc. We go to this. Oh yeah, I remember it. There we go. So I'll find this eventually because he was like in a ledge trap scenario and he just used like Nair. It's really weird.
Separates him. It's his combo game. It's so good. 88%. 88%. I was right.
I have been seeing a lot of DVDs today up at the Winter Semifinals.
Oh my. He doesn't have to like basically lackluster.
Be able to get when with that being said, we're at 74.
But with us,
that glitch as well. Where now we do the baseball.
That matchup was unwinnable. Not because
let me see. I think it was right here.
200 and something damage.
Yeah, see, you can kind of just use Nair as a way to hit the Gordo back, which is really good in this matchup because Nair also doubles as an anti-air against King Dedede, which is very, very important because Dedede likes to be in the air. So Nair is just like great pressure up close, great to hit Gordo back for the ledge traps and to cross Dedede up and anti-air him. So it's really good in this matchup to play neutral against him because most Peaches really struggle in this matchup, especially on Wi-Fi. We don't talk about Dedede on Wi-Fi. That matchup's kind of unplayable. But offline, when you can react to what Dedede is doing, Nair is really good. But he can still wall you out at mid-range, so you can't really hold forward. You can use full hop float against the Gordos. That's another mix-up. But Nair is just so helpful because it's kind of like an option you can throw out at times against Dedede, which is really helpful. But yeah, he gets comboed to death. You can kind of edge guard him. It's not as easy as these characters where it's like they don't have a jump and it's like you're dead if I edge guard you correctly. But yeah, being able to live long versus Peach because you have better tools to get back to the stage and being able to wall Peach out with Gordos and hammer disjoints is really good. So you can argue it as even. I think Dedede does decently well versus Peach overall. It's definitely not a free matchup at all, just because he lives so long and he has a disjoint. But Peach definitely has an edge, because if you camp him and you know how to use some of Peach's odd tools like Nair, Toad can also be pretty good to get kills in this matchup. And you know how to play around Gordo. And the way you play around Gordo is you always have to mix it up. You don't always want to hit it back. You can use run-up shield. You can cross Dedede up. You can also cross Dedede up, which is a pretty big deal. Stuff like rolling behind Dedede is such a good mix-up against him. But yeah, Peach outclasses this character for sure. And there's definitely a lot of stuff you can do there. You can kind of edge guard him and kill him early off stage, because like a lot of DDDs, when you throw them off stage, they want to throw Gordo at you early, and then you can like throw turnip back at the Gordo and just like kill him off stage. Turnips are good. As long as you don't rush things versus DDD, and you know how to play around Gordos, and you don't force your way in at mid-range, you should be fine. But you can argue even. I think he definitely has better tools than these heavies for sure. Worth mentioning. And not a free matchup at all. Let's go over some more even matchups. I think Falco is similar to Mario, where it's a matchup where both characters, once they hit each other, they can blow each other up. Falco gets edge guarded pretty hard. He gets juggled. It's really hard for him to land. But Falco does have one really important thing to get out of Peach's advantage state, which is a good full hop and airspeed. So he can escape Peach's pressure pretty well. And Falco's combos work pretty well on Peach, and he can edge guard you because again he has good air mobility and good anti-airs, so he can kind of stop Peach from being in the air and landing. And if you're off stage without a jump, he can just kind of go out there with his high full hop. He can also call you out for recovering high too, which is pretty good versus Peach, even if he is like combo food and stuff. In neutral, it's kind of annoying. It's kind of a stalemate where Falco wants you to approach, but you have bigger hitboxes. Stuff like down tilt's amazing up close because you can low profile stuff like up tilt. But the neutral is pretty patient, I guess, where you're kind of baiting out fares and pressuring Falco at that mid range. It's similar to Mario, where you want to maintain that distance to where you can't camp, but you're not too close to get hit by his combo starters. So, but yeah, I think overall it's even. I used to think it's here because of Falco's disadvantage state mix-ups with his full hop. He can also full hop from below the stage and just kind of hit you while ledge trapping. But he's combo food. You can always edge guard him. And turnips are really good. There's a certain way you have to use them. You can't just spam turnips because of reflector, and you can't mash on Falco because of reflector. But it's a really good out of shield. So it's similar to Mario where you just want to kind of hold it and just wall him out in neutral and pressure him with your hitboxes, but not being too close. So I think it's just even at the end of the day. Your buttons are better than Falco's, for sure, and you combo him, but his disadvantage state mix-ups and his combos just work really well on Peach. So I think it's even. And looking at the results, I know like Ling has done okay versus Tilde, and Oryx has done well versus Chef and Mudace as well. So I think results-wise, it's kind of even as well. It's a matchup where you have to know what you're doing. You have to play it a certain type of way, bait out the forward airs, play more like a sortie. But as long as you avoid bad Peach habits, then Falco shouldn't be that bad. Let's see. Let's go over some more even matchup. Let's go over some even zoners, because we kind of talked about some zoners that don't do well versus Peach. I think Snake and Mega Man are pretty similar. These are very slow matchups. These are matchups where don't be surprised if they take a long time. You might be sitting there for a bit, because these characters in neutral have really good neutral versus Peach. They can kind of camp Peach out. I think Mega Man's neutral is better, but Snake's kill power is better, so he kind of makes up for it there. So Snake in neutral is very slow. You're kind of going to be zoning him out with turnips. But the big thing versus these two is Peach's air movement is extremely good along with turnips. And you can pressure them at that blind spot angle that they really struggle to hit. Snake's aerials aren't that great. If Snake's throwing out aerials, he either doesn't know what he's doing or he's just calling you out at that point. Up tilt can hit you, but it's just hard for Snake to really... You can maneuver around grenades and C4 with float, which is super important because a lot of other characters that struggle versus Snake struggle versus the ground game versus Snake, but you don't have to really deal with that with float. You can play very passive, throw turnips at him. But I think the big reason that it's even and not here is because Snake's disadvantage state is so bad that you can always just hit him and blow him up. You want to call out the high recoveries with double jump forward air, condition him to go low, and then you float low and hit him. And that's how you kind of deal with him there. But he also has a good advantage state versus you and better kill power because it's so hard to get off ledge versus Snake. And he can just kill you really early with stuff like up tilt. But another positive Peach has against Snake is you can actually trade with grenades because Peach's damage output is so good that you end up just trading very well with Snake, which is really surprising because most characters can't do that. So overall, the neutral's pretty even. Peach has some really good stuff like being able to trade with grenades, having a better mid-range, avoiding his ground game with float, turnips just poking him at really awkward angles because Snake's mid-range is really meh. It's really poor. So you can play around him there. poke him at that blind spot, which is really good, but Snake can just kill you so early. It can snowball really hard for both players, because yeah, Snake's kill power is so good. But yeah, one other tip is when you're pressuring Snake in the corner, always be ready for dash attack. Always be ready for dash attack on the ground or when he's in the corner, because if you do that, you can put a lot of pressure on Snake. Just something I want to mention. Don't rush things, you have to play it patient. Same with Mega Man. Mega Man has a very, very obvious blind spot, so float is pretty good, but you have to play it patient because he can wall you out. It's a very slow matchup. Like, these matchups I played against good players, they just almost go to time because it's just so patient. But the way Mega Man matchup works is you're kind of moving around him. He's poking you with pellets. He wins neutral like 3 or 4 times. Then you hit him once and you make up all that damage. Wins neutral, you hit him again. And now you're both at kill percent, and it's like whoever gets the kill first wins. Mega Man also has decent options on Peach's shield, which is something to mention. So you can't just spam shield versus him like some of these other zoners. It's kind of something I forgot to mention, but stuff like run up shield with a turn up is a good mix up. But you can't really do that too much versus Mega Man because of stuff like down air being really good. So it's something to mention. And he can also spike you with down air, so he also has a decent advantage state against you. His back air is really big, and F smash can be kind of awkward to get around that ledge. But up close, you pressure Mega Man like super duper well. So yeah, that's something I just want to mention. But yeah, it's a really patient matchup. You can maneuver around Mega Man's blind spot pretty easily. You have to respect stuff like Metal Blade out of shield. That's another thing. You can always just kind of catch Metal Blade, and it's just camp with it. And it's really hard for him to deal with that. So I just want to mention that. But yeah, it's really even just because like when played optimally, it's just so slow, and it's like whoever gets the kill first. And they both have good advantage states. It's really hard for him to escape back air out of the corner. Fair is fantastic against Mega Man, so yeah, I just want to mention that. Let's go over... Oh, we're almost... I think we're like halfway done. But yeah. I'm going to go over Pyra Mythra. I think the more I play this, it's here. Just kind of surprising. Because like when Pyra Mythra came out, it was like here, then it went to here, now we're here. So similar to Chrom, where you don't have to approach this character. So against Mythra, she's faster, she has a disjoint, but you have the anti-airs to deal with her, and Peach's out of shield's pretty good versus this character, especially with the turn-up. So you can actually box with her quite well. And against Pyra, you have better frame data, which is really helpful. She's basically like Ike, which we'll talk about in a bit. I think Ike is another character here, but we'll talk about this character first, where you can kind of you have the anti-airs to really deal with this character. Back air is extremely good versus Pyra Mythra, but the big thing is, similar to Chrom, you can always hit them and edge guard them, which is really good. And turn up out of shield's really good versus this character, especially. So I know people like Spargo has said it's losing, and it makes sense because if you look at the results, Umeki has beaten Shuton, Mudes has beaten like Cosmos and other really good Pyra Mythra players. Razo's done well against like Dragonelle, and there's a lot of other Peach players that have done well. I think, yeah, Linling's done well versus Blank. So the results kind of show that Peach has a slight advantage, but it's kind of evenish, I think. You can argue it here, but I can see why you would put it here, because the edge guarding is so good. But they're very scary characters in their own right. Pyra can just like kind of hit you and kill you. But if you're playing very passive and neutral, and you're not like forcing your way in, and you really use your boxing game really well, then it's not too bad. JCFF Nair is really good in this matchup. Turn up out of shield, like I said. You can also dash grab Mythra pretty reliably. In some spots, it's kind of like a little unknown fact. But yeah, overall, it's similar to Chrom. Just, yeah, it's just really similar to Chrom. That's all I have to say. Oh yeah, Ike. So Ike is another character where you have the anti-airs to shut him down, and you can edge guard him. Backer plus Z-drop, is funny enough, is true on this character. So if you play, you can always pull a turn up because Ike is really slow, and backer plus Z-drop is true on him. You can also pressure Ike's landings pretty well, but I think what makes him better than Corrin is his kill confirms on Peach are a lot better. Stuff like Nair up air is pretty good, and I think Ike's general range, it's really good. I don't know. I think Ike's kill confirms are better on Peach, so he has a better time killing, and he gets stuff off of grab, so you can't just like run up shield like you would versus Corrin. So that's pretty good. But yeah, you can anti-air this character and pressure his landings pretty well, but he can wall you out because he has better range. But overall, Peach definitely has an anti-air to shut him down. He's so slow that you can pull Turner whenever you want. But if you're playing really passive in neutral and not forcing your way in, you'll get your hit eventually and kill him. But if you know how to edgeguard Ike, then it's really good for you. He can't really do the same to you. You just have to know how to avoid his kill confirms. Don't rely on parrying, because that's kind of a misconception. Versus Ike is, oh, I need to parry to beat him, but he gets grab. So it's more stuffing out his jumps than relying on parry. Parry punishes are good mix-ups, but it's not foolproof versus Ike. Speaking of characters you can't spam shield is Bayonetta. Bayonetta's even. So this is a weird one, because Peach can kind of camp on the ground with the turnip and her ground flow aerials and pressure Bayo on the ground, but Bayo can kind of just air camp you and be really obnoxious to hit. So this matchup all comes down to whoever has the lead, because they can just kind of camp and it dictates the rest of the match from there. So what does Peach really have in this matchup? Well, to start, Peach can pressure Bayo's shield somewhat well because her aerials are safe enough on shield, so you can avoid stuff like up B out of shield. You don't have to jump at all in this matchup. Peach's ground game is just strong enough so where you can deal with Bayo. So stuff like ground float back air and JCFF back air are really good. I think Peach with momentum is a little more scary than Bayo with momentum. So because Peach has better kill power than Bayo. But Bayo can anti-air Peach and kind of stop Peach from overextending. So that's a really big deal. Both of these characters can't really mash on each other or go for like brain dead options, because like the common Bayo habit is to like ABK from ledge, but you can up smash her. A lot of Peaches will try to land with down air or overextend, but she can witch time you. So both of these characters do a great job at kind of calling each other's BS out, which is good. But Bayo's disadvantage is pretty good. It's hard to ledge trap her, so she can avoid a lot of Peach's pressure, but you can kill Bayo a lot earlier, and you have good enough out of shield and good enough ground game to where it's hard for her to approach. So she can air camp you to kind of deal with that. Bayo can edge guard you if you don't have a jump. But yeah, I think overall it's just really even because the neutral's pretty stalemate. But Peach kills earlier, but Bayo's disadvantage state is a little bit better, and you can't get your big combos on Bayo. So yeah, you can play Peach like Diddy against Bayo. You have to play it really patient, and I think it's just even overall. Also, like I was saying earlier, is you can't just spam shield. Shield's good in some spots versus Bayo's and mix-up, but against good Bayos, they have shield poke setups. Getting grab can be pretty bad against Bayo because she can like up throw you and then catch your landing from there. So yeah, that's really awkward to deal with against Bayo. So you want to just like mix it up. But I think if the Peach plays it pretty well against Bayo, then it can be kind of hard because Peach with momentum is scary because you kill her earlier. Yeah, I think overall I think it's just even, just because of turnips are just so good in this matchup as an add a shield and to force her to approach. But yeah, whoever has the lead, it's just so hard for the other person to kill them, which is why I think it's here. So that's even. I think Diddy is the opposite, where it's another even matchup where he's on the ground with the banana, but you're on the platform with the turnip. So if you remember that VOD of JoJo versus Dakpo that I was looking at, it's kind of like where it's just a stalemate in neutral. Floating in mid-range is really good against Diddy because you avoid stuff like big banana confirms. You can also trade with Diddy because you have bigger hitboxes. And that's a lot of just conditioning with items in this matchup. In terms of advantage, disadvantage state, Diddy can edge guard Peach with stuff like Z-drop down air, which is pretty good. But you can always just throw turnip off stage against Diddy and gimp him. So yeah, I think it's just even. It's the opposite of Bayo, where like whoever has the lead just kind of camps, and it's really hard for them to deal with that. But it's one of these weird matchups where you both have similar game plans but different strengths. Like Diddy is a character that wants to whip punish, play bait and punish, use items to whip, use items, shield, that sort of thing. But he's more grounded. But Peach has bigger hitboxes. Peach is slower but has bigger hitboxes, can trade with Diddy pretty well. Has float to avoid his stuff. But Diddy has better kill confirms, but I think you edge guard Diddy a little bit better. But yeah, overall it's pretty even. Similar game plans, just different strengths. And Peach with the banana can kind of pressure Diddy and box with them pretty well. So it's really hard for Diddy to deal with that. Let's see. Let's go for another even or losing matchup after I get some more water. So, we're talking about fast characters, right? I think Fox and Sheik are really similar. I think these are tough matchups. It doesn't seem very obvious at first until you fight a good one that knows how to fight Peach. But the way I'll explain it is these characters are fast enough and neutral and have a good enough advantage state on Peach to put you in a lot of uncomfortable spots. They can always play at a range versus Peach to where they can punish you for pulling turnip, while also kind of stuffing you out with their good frame data, which is important, and camp you out with stuff like laser or needles, which is good. So it's already, they can play, it's kind of the opposite of Ganon, where they can play at a range where they can react to what you do, but you have to kind of hope they make a mistake in order to get a hit on them. So it's really annoying to just like get anything started on these characters. Sheik's Fair kind of shuts off a lot of Peach's landing aerials. It also is really good against float. Fox's Nair confirms. I think Fox's kill confirms are a little bit better against Peach overall, and it's safe on shield. And another thing, speaking of safety on shield, even if you have a turn up, they haven't safety enough aerials on shield to where it won't really matter too much. Sheik's Fair is like -2. Fox's Nair is like -4, I think, but it's really safe. So they can also pressure your shield, even if you hold shield, versus them. Sheik has good grab confirms, but I think Fox's juggle game is a little bit better, because up air will kill you at like 100. So these characters in neutral can kind of force Peach's hand, and it's you just have to wait for them to make a mistake, because you're so slow. You have bigger hitboxes, but they have good frame data, and better safety on shield. But one tip I will say is these characters can struggle to kill. Around 100%, if you notice that they like to approach with a Nair, you can just up smash them and kill them. So that's a really good way to get kills. But disadvantage sucks because Peach is floaty, so where these characters can frame trap you. And she can go off and edge guard you with stuff like needles into Bouncing Fish. Bouncing Fish can also hit you because you're so floaty. So she can go for stuff like Bouncing Fish reads off stage against you more reliably than like fast fallers with Sheik. I used to play Sheik in this matchup, and it's kind of hard for Peach to get out of disadvantage. But it's also hard to get off of ledge because, they're fast, they have good frame data. The only thing you really have in this matchup is Peach's advantage state and ability to trade with these characters pretty well. Back air against these characters is ridiculously good because you can always force trades versus them. You can always edge guard Fox, which is pretty good. But I think good Foxes can mix up their recovery quite well, especially if they have a jump. So it's not that easy to just edge guard like good Fox players. But Sheik has a good disadvantage state with like Bouncing Fish to reset and a good dash to shield out of the corner. But she can I think she struggles more to kill than Fox, to where you can kind of force trades more and just kind of steal games like that. But I think her neutral and advantage state is oppressive enough to where I can't see it as even. So definitely has good tools. It's super hard to land versus these characters. Can frame trap you and can force Peach in a lot of uncomfortable spots in this matchup. But yeah, I think it's not here just because of Peach's ability to trade and just kill them early. But yeah, they put you in so many uncomfortable spots. You have to just hope they make them. You're playing for them to make a mistake. And if it's like that, then it's here. But if you know what you're doing and you know the right spots to press a button and you don't overswing to where they'll whiff punish you, then it'll be fine. But like I said, they can always play at that range to where they can react and whiff punish you or punish you for pulling turn up. and also being hard to hit. So definitely here. They can force Peach's hand pretty well. Let's go over some more matchups. Let's go over some more. Actually, we haven't gone over too many zoners. So let's go over Hero. Let's go over Hero. I think Hero's even. Hero's a fun matchup. So the way I like to describe this is Hero can just cheese you really hard, and he has a lot of good tools versus Peach. He takes advantage of Peach being slow, but Peach can bait Hero super well because of his blind spot. So you can use Float over a lot of his spells and run up Shield with a turn up to kind of pressure Hero pretty well, which is good. And Peach's burst options are really good in this matchup. Stuff like turn up and auto cancel side B are extremely good against him. So where he can't just always pull up menu for free and you can bait him. But since Peach is so slow, he always has a chance to kind of look through his menu and get something. And he also has Zoom, of course. But you can run Hero out of MP pretty well. Even if Hero's game plan is a little more inconsistent than Peach, it's a little more explosive and a little more devastating compared to Peach. So I think it kind of evens out there. He also has disjoints to kind of keep you from being in the air too long. But yeah, overall, Peach can abuse Hero's blind spot, but Hero can abuse Peach's slow ground speed pretty well. And also, you can just rinse, repeat, edge guard him if he never gets Zoom. If he keeps up being, then it's like, well, yeah, you're just going to keep getting hit and you can die. You can also cross Hero up pretty well, so that's pretty good. But yeah, you can bait Hero pretty well. You just have to abuse his blind spot. You have to know how he wants to use his spells. Definitely recommend going to like training room and just kind of practicing like which spells to use and kind of playing Hero yourself to kind of understand him a little bit better. But yeah, I think overall this is even. And let me get this is the ugly Hero. Let me get the other one with the do-rag. And I'll get the Samus. Let's go over another zoner with Samus. I think Samus is pretty hard. Samus is pretty self-explanatory, right? Actually, I'll replace these at the end. But even though I think those look better. There's Hero. There he is. But yeah, Samus. So Samus is a character that can zone Peach out. She really takes advantage of Peach's slow ground speed. It's not that bad once you know how to fight Samus. Online, we don't talk about this matchup. It's unplayable online. But offline, full hop float against Samus is really good at far range. So at far range against Samus, you're going to be playing very passive, focusing on full hopping over Zaire, and kind of just playing around her projectiles. Turnips are really good at poking her. It's also good out of shield. As long as you can, if you really mix up how you're pressuring her at mid-range, you can do pretty well versus her. Ground float aerials can also clank. Well, Peach's aerials in general can clank with Samus's stuff and be safe on shield. So you can kind of swing while she's charging, and if she shields, then you're safe. But if she shoots it, then you just go through it and hit her. So it's pretty good. But yeah, overall, Samus's game plan is simple, but it works really well versus Peach. Because what happens is you kind of get hit by a charge shot. It's really hard to get out of her advantage state, get ledge trapped, and it's just kind of a GG from there. So it's really annoying, but it's really hard for Samus to get off the ledge offline because you can react. Because she's really floaty, she gets juggled pretty hard, so her ledge options are pretty limited. So you just have to mix up how you're playing that mid-range and like slowly close the gap, poke her with turnip, use float at far range to where you can avoid some of her moves and projectiles rather than wasting shield health, which is pretty good. Just avoid getting grabbed. That's the big thing. Avoid getting grabbed by Samus. You can use stuff like spot dodge. But yeah, Samus's game plan is simple, but Peach has more mix-ups to kind of make up for it, and you can keep Samus in disadvantage pretty well. Don't be afraid to go out and edge guard her. If she's being very predictable with bombs off stage, you can kind of go out there and just like swing at her because she isn't very fast. So she can't really escape you just chasing her. And really take advantage of Samus's jump. So that's why float at far range is good, because you condition her to jump. And then you can kind of like catch her landings and play around her landings. Because her jumps are pretty committal because she's floaty. But yeah, Peach's, you have to really know Peach's mix-ups really well in this matchup and build off of your pressure and conditioning versus her. But you'll be fine as long as you're playing it offline. Online is just no, horrible. But yeah, her game plan just works super well versus Peach. But it's not here because you have more mix-ups. I think a lot of Peaches overrate this matchup, but it's definitely an uphill battle. Speaking of another really hard zoner to deal with, I think Link is another one. So Link is a matchup where some days I'm like it's here, some days I'm like it's here, but I think overall it's just hard for both sides. So how this matchup works is Link can limit Peach's movement. He also has good boxing tools with Nair, but Peach can always kind of just like hit Link and kill him. And also, you have a lot more options versus Nair than a lot of other characters. So, if like ground full back, Fair is really good in ground full up air. This is a funny thing about this matchup is F tilt has a purpose because F tilt is frame 7. So F tilt is frame 7 and it lingers. But guess what? Link's Nair also is frame 7 and it lingers. So if you're in those up close scenarios against Link, then you can just kind of press F tilt if you think he's just going to spam Nair. So it's a good like get off me option if you think the Nair is coming. So that's surprisingly useful. You can also cross Link up and get around his blind spot with float. And you can also box with Link somewhat well because of back air and fair. Fair at mid-range is really helpful in this matchup because it outranges the Nair, which is good. And turn up out of shield is really good against Link. And Peach can just oppress Link once you get a hit. You can, around mid%, you want to really be aggressive off stage versus Link because you can edge guard him. There's tons of time versus Link where it's really hard to get in neutral, but then I just hit him and just make a comeback. So I think that's even there. Link's kill confirms work brutally well on Peach, stuff like boomerang forward air. And Bomb is also really good against Peach because he's really slow. So I think it's hard for both sides because it's really fragile for Link. And Link's ledge options are pretty limited. Again, like what we've been saying is, if you're not fast in the air versus Peach, it's hard to escape her pressure because you can't just like jump away or over her. But yeah, Link's tools just limit Peach's options in neutral pretty well and cover a lot of spaces that Peach wants to be. But Peach can cross Link up. You can always keep him in disadvantage and turn up out of shield's pretty good. Fair is kind of like the key in this matchup. I'm not even going to lie. But I think overall it's even. It's just hard. It's just annoying for both sides. But it's a really fun matchup, I think. I really enjoy it. I think another zoner-ish matchup is Wolf. Wolf is even. So Wolf's weird because it feels like it's here, but then it just feels like it's here sometimes. But the best way I can describe this matchup is Wolf has better kill confirms than Peach, and he can camp you, and he has decent anti-airs, and good air mobility. That's the big thing. Good air mobility and just being fast in the air, we've been saying it a lot, is just so good versus Peach, because that means you can escape her pressure, which is big. But the thing about Wolf is, even if his kill confirms, even if he has better kill confirms than you, and better neutral, you can always just kind of hit Wolf and kill him, because the way the arc that Turnip goes off stage is really brutal against stuff like Wolf's side B. So that's extremely important. Also, you can get in Wolf's blind spot pretty well and box with him quite well because he doesn't have the best out of shield. So you can kind of mash on Wolf once you're up close, and it's hard for him to... He's kind of just forced to jump out of your pressure, but at least he has that option. But yeah, you can play around laser with flow. You can pressure his shield and box with him up close pretty well because his out of shield's not that great. Also, similar to Rob, his out of shield's not that great. I forgot to mention that. But yeah, you can box with Wolf quite well and pressure him at that angle, similar to Rob. So stuff like JCFF Nair and back air is really good. But it's also hard for both of these characters. Wolf and Peach do a really good job at denying what the other character really wants. Peach can kind of just float around the lasers, and with the right movement options, it's hard. You can kind of run circles and maneuver around Wolf pretty well. But Wolf has good air mobility and laser, to where he can kind of just camp Peach and platform camp you and just kind of move around you because he's faster than you in the air. But yeah, so if like down throw side B is true on Peach, and he has better kill confirms with back air, but Peach can mash on him, and you can always just like move around his blind spot and just kind of gimp him with turnips. It's really funny and pressure his shield. Sometimes it feels the more I play, I feel like it's here, but I don't think so. I just can't see it being here because of Wolf's kill confirms being super good versus Peach. So like back air is just killing you at 70, I'm good. And he can also like 2-frame you a little bit with like down smash. But yeah, you can gimp Wolf and mash on him pretty well. But he definitely has good stuff versus Peach. So, let's go over another losing matchup. I think Game & Watch definitely goes here. So Game & Watch is a character where neutral's completely fine, but disadvantage and advantage states suck because you can be playing fine in neutral, but Game & Watch hits you once with like a nair, and you just get nair, juggled up air, you're at ledge, and then it's just really bad. Because Peach is so floaty that it's so hard to get around his juggles. You don't really have many options versus there. And then you're off stage, and then it's like I have to avoid a back air edge guard. If I somehow avoid that, I now have to escape bacon ledge traps. And it's just like you're so floaty that it's really easy for Game & Watch to kind of catch you in disadvantage and keep you there. I don't think Meister has lost to a Peach in like 2 years, but it's definitely doable. And because in neutral you can wall out Game & Watch pretty well. The key is if you ever get the lead versus Game & Watch, you can hold a turnip and use retreating aerials, similar to Doc and some of these other characters Peach wins, and it's really hard for him to deal with that. Funny enough, back air plus Z drop is true, but it doesn't matter as much because it's so hard to because he can just hit you once and do as much damage to you back. But at least Game & Watch is light though. And there's some setups you can do. Like one thing I like to do against Game & Watch is down throw, read the up B, and then up B with Parasol to kill him early. So there's some stuff you can do to kill him early. But you can't really keep Game & Watch or pressure him that well because one, he actually has good air mobility and up B out of shield. So Peach can kind of deal with up B. You have Nair, which is good, and I think well-spaced forward air. So that's what keeps it from being like a -2. But he can alleviate Peach's pressure pretty well with up B, recover high, and you can't really edge guard Game & Watch because that up B is just so good. You can't really, it's super hard to land versus Game & Watch. It's just so annoying. And even in neutral, you can't be in the air because of Nair, forward air, and back air all being really good. And you can catch your landings with stuff like up smash. But you can play like a sword character versus him. Fair is really good. Turnip's also really good versus Game & Watch because he's so slow, so you'll always have a chance to pull Turnip. But it's just the risk-reward for Game & Watch is definitely in his favor. But it's not impossible, though. You just have to play it very patient. And you want to be more at Game & Watch's sides rather than directly above or below him. Because he has like down air and up his smash attacks to get you there. You can also toad against bacon ledge traps. But yeah, Game & Watch's advantage state is just so effective versus Peach that it's definitely losing, for sure. And he can alleviate a lot of Peach's pressure with his air mobility, up B, and his nair out of the corner. But yeah, I think it's losing, but it's not impossible. If you look at the results, Meister is just done so well. So let's go over another even/winning matchup. I think these two characters are similar. I think Greninja and Inkling are here. So you know where we were talking about fast characters, right? But the difference here is they don't have as great out of shield or ways to escape Peach's pressure with edge guards. Also, they don't have the projectiles that Sheik or Fox does, which is important. Also, you couldn't spam turnips versus Fox because of Reflector. Forgot to mention that. But these are the type of characters they want to whiff punish you and catch your landings. But floating at mid-range is super good, similar to Falcon, to avoid a lot of their combo starters. So that's really important. You can platform camp these characters and air camp these characters, and it's really hard for them to get many of their combo starters on you. And even if you do get a hit, then you can just pressure their shield and trade with them with stuff like back air. Peach doesn't really mind small characters like Pikachu and Pichu that much because her ground flow aerials like back air are just so big and cover a lot of space. So Inkling can't do the good old all low profile your hitboxes and hit you like she would versus sword characters. So you don't have to worry about that, which is really good. And both of these characters don't have the greatest out of shield. The only thing you have to worry about with Inkling, similar to Rob, is up smash around kill percent. And Peach can kind of recover high over Inkling's ledge traps as well. And Peach has enough mix-ups off stage to avoid a lot of Greninja's edge guards. But he can't edge guard you if you don't have a jump. So that's really good. But the reason these characters aren't in winning is because since they have good enough mobility and air mobility, they can kind of jump over you and just like camp you with neutral. And it's really hard for Peach to just like chase them. But even if they are camping you, you can air camp them back and use turnips and make it and play very patient. And your hits matter a lot more while it's harder for them to land a solid combo starter on you, which is important. And you have better out of shield. So even if you do get up close, then you can outbox them, which is important. So yeah, that's mainly it because you can just air camp these characters and kind of avoid a lot of their advantage state because of float and recovering high. So I think it's here. Inkling's back air is pretty good. Greninja's forward air is pretty good at they're good disjoints to kind of wall Peach out. But yeah. And you can also edge guard these characters. I forgot about that because you can kind of float under the stage and just hit the recovery, which is really good. And yeah, that's basically it. It's not that bad for these characters. I know a lot of Inkling players like to complain and just want to put it here, but I think Inkling's disjoint with her back air and ability to kind of just like mobility camp Peach makes it really annoying. You also can't really mash on Inkling too hard because of jab. But you can play the bait and punish game to where you force her to waste ink and just pressure her afterwards. But yeah. Greninja 2, I think just back air plus Z-drop work on him? No. But yeah, the fact that Peach can kind of just air camp these two and hide her landing super well is why I think it's here. Also, ban FD versus these characters. Never take these characters to FD. And also, these two characters can struggle to kill, so you can just play very evasive with the leader at kill percent, and it's just super annoying for them to kill you. Float goes over roller, which you probably know about if you play this matchup. So yeah, you can play a better ground game versus these two to where they're kind of just forced to camp, and your hits matter and your advantage state matters a lot more than they do, which is why I think it's here. Not that bad for them, because they do have the mobility to kind of get around Peach's stuff. I think Luigi is definitely... Actually, I'm going to talk about Joker, because he's really similar to these two. So, if you remember what I was saying about characters with her box shifting, Peach doesn't really care too much about because of ground flow back air. Joker's similar. Joker's similar to these two characters because, again, he doesn't have the out of shield to really box with Peach. At least base Joker does. And he gets edge guarded. But what Joker has is he has better anti-airs and I think better edge guarding overall compared to Peach. So it's really even. This was a matchup for a long time. I really didn't know where to put it. I was like, here. Some days it felt here. I was like, it's here. But Joker, I think just Arsene just kind of helps him a lot compared to these two. And his generally advantage state versus Peach is scary. But Peach doesn't have to force an approach, and turnips are really good against Joker. And the fact you can just edge guard him is really good. Also, back air plus Z-drop works on him. Very helpful. And Peach can kind of get around a lot of Joker's zoning with float at mid-range. He can like call you out with back air, but again, even if you're hitting me with like a back air, you're with like a rising aerial, you're not getting you're not getting something like a grounded combo starter like a grab or a falling aerial with like forward air with Joker, which is really important. What else? Peach can bait out Joker really well because of that maneuver around him. Another huge thing is against Joker Arsene, if you have a turnip in hand and Joker messes up and you whip punish him, turnip train just deletes Arsene like immediately. Like if he's around mid percent, you can just turnip train and then Arsene's gone. Or you can hit him with like a good combo starter and Arsene's gone. And you can also force Arsene out really early because of Peach's damage output. So Peach's damage output ends up being extremely important for bringing out Arsene early to where you can avoid kills and also getting rid of Arsene really quickly if he messes up. The reason it's not winning is because, oh my god, disadvantage in it against Arsene is extremely scary. So it's like back air pressure in the corner is extremely annoying. And he can edge guard you with back air and counter because he does have good air mobility. And just mobility in general versus Peach. Dash attack catches your landings really well, and he can kill you early. But if Joker's recovery wasn't as exploitable as it would probably be losing. But he doesn't have the best out of shield. You can box with base Joker and maneuver around his projectiles. So against base Joker, it's winning. But Arsene is like losing, so it's like here. So there's definitely a few perspectives you can look at it to see why it would be even and why a lot of things balance out. But yeah, they both do really well. It's just a matchup where, similar to Link, it's just hard for both characters, honestly. Alright, back to Luigi. Luigi is another character where you can air camp him. But I honestly will say, on paper, this sounds bad for Luigi, but the more I play it, and I played some really good Luigis, Luigi definitely has tools. Stuff like Zair and Fireball is really good for anti-airing Peach. And his punish game can just kill you. But it's hard for Luigi to land the grab if you're platform camping, and Float's just another resource that another characters don't have versus Luigi. Peach doesn't have the range, like say Zero Suit, for example, to really just like not play neutral versus Luigi. But the fact you can always mix up with Float and apply pressure to Luigi without fearing the grab is really huge. You can also edge guard Luigi. Also, I forgot to mention, but in the corner versus Joker, just avoid the down tilt or a dash attack. And versus Luigi, Samus in the corner, avoid the grab. So, and Pac-Man too. Pac-Man's another character that I like to grab in the corner. But yeah, Luigi, you can always just kind of platform camp it, but he does have a really good punish game on Peach. It's also not that easy to get off ledge versus this character. You can recover high, but Luigi has a good enough full hop to where he can call you out for it. But Luigi definitely has tools, even though you can always avoid the grab, edge guard him, turn up is really good. You can also cross Luigi up, which is pretty good. He can call you out with up smash against Float, which is good. Is good ledge trapping versus you. But yeah, it's definitely winning, but Luigi has more tools than you would think against Peach to anti-air her, which is important. I know Razo against Elegant like had the most positive record for the longest time. So yeah, I think overall Peach definitely has a slight edge, but not undoable for Luigi. He can kill you pretty early. You can argue it as here, even or winning if you want. Let's see. Let me get some water. Alright. Another character that I think is surprising is Ice Climbers. So this is a matchup I randomly just played a lot. It's similar to Meta Knight where it's like, it's a really uncommon character, but I just like randomly played against it a lot. So Ice Climbers, surprisingly, wall Peach out pretty well. They have good hitboxes to kind of hit out Flow. Blizzard Wall stops you from just mashing on them, even if they don't have the best out of shield. And they can just hit you and kill you, similar to Luigi. But similar to Luigi, you can just camp this character with turnips on a platform. And Ice Climbers don't have the best out of shield to where you can kind of just cross them up and pressure them with stuff like down air pretty well. Fair is also really good in this matchup. And side B is really good against Ice Climbers. It's a good thing to pressure their shield, as well as split the Ice Climbers up and whiff punish them. So some of Peach's weird options just work really well. Toad is good versus Blizzard, because if they ever want to like Blizzard Wall you and use desync combos, you can just use Toad and just separate them. And Ice Climbers' disadvantage state is just not that great. Also, weirdly enough, grab can be forward throw is pretty good because forward throw is unreactable and you can split the Ice Climbers up like that. Don't use stuff like down throw or pummeling unless you grab like Popo or something. And you can pummel. But yeah, you can split the Ice Climbers. Peach has a lot of tools to just split the Ice Climbers up. Turnips are good. You can just hit like Nana, and then if you follow up with like, and if you ever whip punish them with like a side B or something, then the previous damage from turnip just separates them a lot better. Up air is really good for juggling them and separating them. But honestly, the Ice Climbers just don't do that bad versus Peach. Float is also good. at avoiding stuff like icicles and side B. But yeah, weirdly enough, Ice Climbers wall Peach out when it should be the other way around, but that's just not the case, and they have a good advantage state on you. Just don't panic and disadvantage against these combo characters like Luigi, Ice Climbers, Mario, because that's how they'll get their kills. But yeah, fair is really good. You can play like a sword character and just camp with turnips and be really hard to hit, but Ice Climbers, similar to Luigi, have more tools than you would think they do. Stuff like Blizzard, ledge traps are pretty good, as well as you just need to know their cheese, because stuff like ledge trump, Nana into Popo F smash is pretty good. And yeah, basically their juggling is also really good on Peach. I forgot about their up air, and they have good kill power, but you can keep them in disadvantage pretty well. There's a trick you can do where you can do Z drop ledge trump. I forgot. I know Floating Pluto did that, but you can like do a lot of tricks at the ledge with like down ground flow down air and Z drop back air ledge jump to kind of get rid of the ice climbers when they snap ledge or try to snap ledge. Golf club is also weirdly good. It's similar to Jigglypuff where they're so slow, where you can kind of wall them out with golf club as another disjoint. So just keep that in mind. You want to play keep away and play very patient, but because Peach can just like avoid the grab really well, it's similar to Melee, where if Peach plays very passive and plays to not get grabbed, then it's really hard for the ice climbers to get much started on you, and that's why I think it's here. But they had, like Luigi, they definitely have a lot more tools than you would think. It's a matchup where if you don't know what you're doing, it can be surprising. It's similar to Zelda. Let's see. It's another one. I think, speaking of characters like that, Rosalina and Luma is even. It's an even matchup. So another character that walls Peach out pretty well. Rosa can Starbits camp Peach pretty effectively because she's so slow. But similar to other zoners, Rosa has a very obvious blind spot with like with diagonal pressure. So you can float over stuff like Starbits and pressure her with forward air and turnips pretty well. And Peach's general air movement is pretty good at weaving around Rosa and Luma pretty well. Another thing is you can pressure Rosa's shield pretty effectively. You can cross her up. And while you're hitting Rosa's shield and pressuring her, you can hit Luma as well. So that's really important. So you can pressure Rosa's shield extremely effectively. And yeah, so if you ever get up close, you can do that. But she definitely wins the mid and far range. But both characters mess each other up once they get a hit. Rosa's juggling on Peach is disgusting. Rosa's fair is also really big, so she can go out and edge guard you if you're being careless. And her ledge trapping, of course, is really good. But you can also juggle Rosa pretty well because she's floaty, and you can edge guard her because her recovery doesn't have a hitbox. And once she's in the corner, she's big, so it's similar to Heavy, where when you're big in the corner against Peach, it's hard to escape her pressure. Doesn't have the best air mobility, so you can keep her in the corner. And you can also get rid of Luma pretty easily there. But yeah, Peach can always pressure and weave around Rosa at that diagonal angle with float and poke her at that angle pretty well, while also pressuring her shield up close. But Rosa walls you out, camps you with star bits, so it's really even there. Yeah, just overall really even matchup. Let's see, what's the next one? Speaking of another wall character, I think Martha and Lucina are here. So we've been kind of talking about sword characters against Peach, and it really depends. Like Shulk, Chrom and Roy, Pyra, Mythra. I think what separates Marcina from these guys is their edge guarding. So the neutral's pretty similar. You can micro space around their nair pretty well and kind of pressure their shield extremely well. You can cross them up like most other sword characters. And turnips are also really good against Marcina because turnip out of shield is just good. Sure, they have shield breaker, but if you have a full shield breaker won't break it unless it's charged. So that's really good. So this is a matchup like I know Lucina players like Vermilion and Mr. E were like, this feels pretty even because it's similar to Link and other characters where it's like it's just hard for both sides to deal with because they wall you out with stuff like Nair and F tilt, and can put a lot of retreating aerials and hitboxes to wall you from being aggressive, but you don't have to approach because you have turn up, empty movement with ground movement like walking and QFR is really good against these characters. But you also keep Marcina at the ledge pretty well because Marcina doesn't have the best burst options nor the best options to get out of Peach's pressure at ledge. So you can keep them there, but Marcina's edge guarding on Peach is definitely what keeps it here, and I think what keeps it even compared to like Chrom and Roy, and they have a better recovery too. So if they ever catch your jump off stage, then they can edge guard Peach pretty effectively with like counter. One tip with Marcina players that I want to see more of is to hold on to ledge and kind of just react to what Peach does if she doesn't have a jump. Because a lot of the times I get back to ledge for free by just up being. See, they want to like hit me with the back air and be greedy, but then I drift away and drift back in when they could have just stayed at ledge and just reacted. But yeah, this is a matchup I played like a lot, especially throughout the beginning of Ultimate. And it used to feel like it was losing, but over time, we've kind of seen how stuff like Peach's parry punishes and turn up out of shield is really good against sword characters, so it's not as bad. They don't have like a comeback mechanic like Shulk or Cloud, so it feels like losing. But yeah, they definitely can wall Peach out of neutral, but Peach's turn up out of shield is ridiculously good. You can also cross up their shield. Being able to cross up Marcina is just so important because you can. They don't have the best options to deal with that. But I think it's hard for both sides. Also, Marth, you want to play at that range where you're always... Peach likes to play at a range where Tipper is really good, but Peach can always like shift her box to mess up Marth's spacing, and he can struggle to kill. But he can always like kill you earlier, and even though it's like Marth is worse than Lucina, he still has the same strengths, but he can kill you earlier while also struggling to kill sometimes. But yeah, I think he has the same strengths as Lucina. The only difference you have to know is Marth gets rewarded for playing more grounded, because stuff like spacing F-tilt for ledge traps is scarier, but Lucina's a more airborne character compared to Marth. So that's really good. Dash attack's also really good in this matchup, because you can like low profile the Nair. Ground flow upper is good. But yeah, if you ever seen like Proto Banham versus Umeki, then you'll kind of see why this feels even. There's definitely a lot of stuff you can do versus these characters, and the better I get at the game, the more I realize these characters aren't as broken as I thought. But they definitely have good tools versus Peach. But you do as well versus them. Oh yeah, and because they don't have the best burst options, you can pull turn up a lot easier versus them. They're not as fast as Croy, and the main thing they're going to have to rely on is like sliding F-tilt to get you. It's another character. Let's go over the last losing matchup. I think it's Cloud. Cloud just matchup I played a lot, and is definitely losing. So it's not that bad though. Honestly, I want to put it here, but I think I'm just really good at the matchup, even though I played a lot of good Clouds. So the thing with Cloud is back air eliminates Peach almost, because back air can pressure you. It's also really safe on shields. It's just, oh my god. But the big thing is you get juggled by Cloud extremely hard. So it's similar to Game & Watch, where if you ever get hit in the air, you just go to ledge. Because like at that point, stuff like dash attack, like Cloud's dash attack, up air, up tilt, up smash, his up air, it's just so good at juggling Peach. So you can't really land versus this character. And so like up B out of shield's really good at alleviating Peach's pressure. So yeah, it's a rough one. But in neutral, he can camp you with limit because you're slow, but it's not that bad. Like, I don't know if you have seen the Cloud VOD I talked about. Peach's pokes are just safe enough so you can hit Cloud's shield and be safe from up B. You want to bait the up B, play around the up B, live or die by the up B. Versus Cloud is a big deal. But Peach can also cross up Cloud pretty well. Turnips are really good at poking Cloud, so he doesn't like charge limit for free. And turnip out of shield is really good. So this is another matchup where you can play completely grounded, similar to the other sword characters, and just hold shield in some spots, and use a lot of empty movement and safe pokes to play around Cloud's tools. Double jump cancel forward air is good. I think a lot of Peaches really struggle versus Cloud because they don't know how to poke him effectively or play around his shield, so they end up kind of letting Cloud run over them for free. But yeah, oh yeah, cross slash is another thing that's kind of safe on shield and can juggle Peach. Once Cloud gets limit though, he can actually go out and edge guard you, and it's really scary. You can die really early, just to like blade beam and cross slash punishes, and he has better mobility, so he can actually chase you a lot better when he's juggling you or when you're off stage. So disadvantage sucks versus this matchup. And then Cloud is good ledge trapping on top of that. But you can edge guard Cloud pretty well. You just have to know how to do it. You can do stuff like Z-drop and space a float down there off stage if he goes low. You can 2-frame him because B doesn't always snap ledge. But yeah, overall, Cloud's neutral and advantage state are just so good versus Peach that I think it's here. But honestly, personally, I would put it here because I'm really confident versus the character. But I think overall, the results just show that Cloud's super good. It's very possible to do well in this matchup. We saw Mute beat Spargo, and yeah, he beat Cola too, but then Cola won on the run back. So it's a very back and forth matchup, very volatile. But yeah, I think it's one. I'm just gonna put it here because it's like definitely one of the worst matchups. It's really hard to get in to that range. What else? Let's go with some more losing matchups, or even slash losing. I think Sonic is similar to Sheik and Fox, where he's fast enough to where he can camp Peach. So this is another matchup where if Sonic has the lead, then he just camps you and Peach is just too slow to really deal with that. Especially online, we don't talk about this matchup. This is another unplayable one online. Honestly, I might put it even, but I think it's just so hard to hit Sonic. And Sonic can also call you out off stage and keep Peach in disadvantage somewhat well. Because if you try to recover high, or if you're in a bad spot off stage, he can spin dash and kill you. And if you recover high, he can just up B and hit you with an aerial. He can also go low. And he also has the mobility to escape Peach's advantage state. Because again, Sonic has good air mobility, spin dash out of the corner. A lot of good tools to escape pressure once you do hit him. Neutral's kind of a stalemate where ground float aerials and just Peach's aerials in general are good at stuffing Sonic's approaches. And you have the tools to kind of wall out what he does after spin dash with stuff like float to position around his neutral B, and you can use like Nair out of shield to call out homing attack, which is pretty good. But yeah, if he ever gets the lead, he just camps. This one's pretty simple to talk about because Sonic's matchups are really simple. It's like you either have the speed to keep up with them and keep him in disadvantage, or you don't. And Peach doesn't. But it's not that bad because you can definitely wall Sonic out. This is a very, very patient matchup where you're keeping stage control, baiting Sonic to commit first, and playing around what he does after spin dash. But yeah, it's definitely annoying for sure. But it's definitely possible. I think, yeah, back air plus Z-drop does work on Sonic. So there's like once in a blue moon where I read the spin dash and get like back air plus Z-drop on him. So it's not here because Sonic sometimes does struggle to kill. And against zoners that struggle to kill, which we'll talk about in a bit, that gives Peach more of a chance to make a comeback against them. And you can trade with Sonic pretty well, but the fact he can edge guard you is just so annoying. And he can use stuff like up B to keep you from going low or high, which is really interesting. I think a lot of his, and he can catch your landings too because he's fast, but yeah, being fast against Peach, really good. Not too much to say here, just like Peach doesn't have the tools to really go even with Sonic if he plays super campy. Let's go over alright, we'll go over the Shotos. I think Ken and Ryu are slight winning or even, and I think Terry's dead even for sure. So similar to Kazuya, right? These characters don't have the range or the best mobility to really call out Peach's movement. You have to move around the Shotos in a very specific way because you don't want to jump into them or be in their airspace because stuff like up tilt and up B can call you out pretty well. I think Ken and Ryu definitely have different strengths against Peach. So Ryu can afford to, I think Ryu does better overall. If you're going to pick one against Peach, definitely pick Ryu. I think Ryu's more even than Ken. But Peach can play a similar game to Diddy, where you're moving around them and you can whiff punish them pretty well. And if you have a turn up, it's really hard for them to approach. The big thing is, versus all the Shotos, back air plus Z-drop works brutally well. So you can actually combo these characters pretty well. And they can't use stuff like Focus out of disadvantage because of up air. And you can always throw the turnip at them and then hit them again out of Focus. So that's really important. So you can keep these characters in disadvantage pretty well, also maneuvering around them in neutral. Ken's mobility is better, but I think he's forced to approach more than Ryu does, which I think Ryu does better because you want to play more passive in this matchup, and Ryu's kit is just better at dealing with that. But you can maneuver around Ryu better because he's slower, so that's why it's still here. But yeah, you can play a game similar to Diddy, where you're kind of walling them out, moving around them, without having to commit too hard to get hit by the combo starters. Just use more full hop movement, because they want to hit you with like short hop nairs and up tilts. And I think the Shotos are really good at calling out a lot of bad Peach and Daisy player habits, like approaching with flow, landing on them. Their out of shield's pretty good, and just being really impatient at ledge and not spacing your aerials on shield. So they can do well with that. I think if you play the Shotos and you have a Peach player that doesn't know the matchup, definitely play that, because you can call out a lot of their bad habits with the Shotos. But if you know how to play footsies versus these characters, and you're really confident in your ground game, it's really good, because stuff like back air will outrange them. As long as you're playing around their shield and you know how to move around them correctly. Terry has a comeback mechanic, and stuff like Crack Shoot and Power Wave are more important versus Peach. Even if he has a slightly worse disadvantage state, I feel like it's more exploitable to like get him and disadvantage because his air mobility is so slow that he's kind of forced to use a special off stage in a lot of spots. But stuff like Power Wave and Crack Shoot are really good at kind of forcing Peach to do something and stuffing her out. So, but you don't have to approach Terry, and he's so slow. And actually, all the Shotos are kind of slow enough to where you can pull turnip whenever you want, especially Ryu and Terry. So you have to play patient. You have to focus on using your movement option around their threat bubble and kind of seeing what he does after shooting Power Wave. One trick versus Terry that I like is floating backwards, so I can always threaten back air and ground flow up air against Crack Shoot or whatever approach he's going to hit me with. One thing to avoid versus Terry is don't get baited by his specials. A lot of his specials can auto-cancel. Stuff like Power Dunk and Crack Shoot, Terry's like to use burst movement options like that auto-cancel to kind of bait you and get closer to you faster. So that's pretty good. But yeah, I know Razo is like a really positive record on Kless. I think it's like 20-something. Not the best. But yeah, I think overall Terry definitely does the best versus Peach. Ryu second, Ken third, Kazuya last. But if the Peach doesn't know the matchup, you can definitely just beat them pretty easily, because they call out a lot of bad Paisy habits if they don't know what they're doing. But yeah, Peach can just play like Diddy, whereas these characters, and make it really hard for them. Just because you can hold turnip and always catch stuff like a roll in or jump in versus them and just play around that. We should probably finish the even/winning matchups. I think the last ones are Toon Link, Robin, and Wii Fit. So these are kind of the last three zoners to talk about. They all do different things very well versus Peach, and you can argue them as even. So Robin's a character I play, and the way I describe this is Peach can always play at a range where she can kind of float at that mid to far range against Robin and poke him with turnips, while also avoiding stuff like Arc Fire and Levin aerials, because Robin's slow enough to where if you play at a certain range and poke him, it's really hard for him to deal with that, especially if you have a lead. And if Robin doesn't do anything, Peach has a better ground game to kind of come at Robin aggressively and hit him with ground flow aerials, and Robin doesn't have the best out of shield to deal with that or the best ground game to deal with that, which is really important. Ground float up air is really good against his jumps, but the big reason it's here is because Robin's disadvantage state against Peach is just terrible. Turnips destroy you, Peach can just float down there and hit you. There are ways to defend yourself as Robin against Peach with like projectiles, but Peach can kind of mess Robin up once he's off stage. Peach kind of outclasses Robin a little bit, and Peach can always recover high over the ledge traps, which is pretty good. But the reason that's not winning is because 11 arrows are really big. Thunder poking is really good against Peach. But Peach can always play at a range against Robin, so where he can bait Robin to use a resource and pressure him pretty well. And then once you get hit, he can just die. So it's really, really bad. But yeah, Chirps are good at poking him. Parry punishers are really good. But overall, Peach's ground game being better is just so helpful in this matchup. And out of shield. Wii Fit. Wii Fit doesn't do that bad. So the thing versus Wii Fit is she can't really plank you because of ground float back air and turnip. And as long as you're ready to cover the roll, because Wii Fit's roll is pretty long, then you can stop her from just planking you. But she doesn't really have to because of stuff like Sun Salutation, her anti-airs, and her Soccer Ball being able to kind of poke Peach really well in neutral. So she can wall you out, but she doesn't have the best out of shield to stop you from closing the gap or pressuring her at an angle, which is good. So you can always float, kind of like we were saying about Robin, you can kind of float at a full hop height at the mid to far range to avoid a lot of her projectiles and also pressure her shield. But what's weird is like Wii Fit's hitboxes are so weird that she can anti-air you somewhat well with like forward air. And you're slow enough to where she can get deep breathing kind of whenever she wants, which is important. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So that's pretty good. And even if she has deep breathing, it's similar to the Wario and Lucario effect where you outrange her anyways to where it's hard for her to like get much started. Wii Fit's a character you just have to respect her win conditions because she's a character that gets rewarded off of really good reads. So as long as you're playing around her win conditions, like not being over, like getting impatient versus deep breathing, you want to play very passive in neutral. It's a lot of just both characters just poking with projectiles to get an opening. But Wii Fit definitely has good tools versus Peach. You can pressure her shield pretty well. She doesn't have the best out of shield. Soccer Ball's pretty good against Peach because she's so floaty that header snipes can hit Peach off stage, which is annoying. But yeah, overall, I think it's winning just because Peach can pressure. It's so hard for Wii Fit to hit Peach. You can pressure her, and turnips are really good against Wii Fit off stage. So you can keep her in disadvantage and stop her from planking you as long as you're playing passive and not overextending versus Wii Fit. You really don't want to overextend off stage versus this character because she can reversal you. But I wouldn't be mad if you said it was even. You can definitely argue that if you want. But I think Peach is a more consistent character. Toon Link. Oh yeah, also don't panic air dodge versus her. That's another really big thing because like I said, Wii Fit's a character that gets rewarded for very good reads. Toon Link is definitely the worst out of the three links, but he doesn't do bad. He can wall Peach out pretty well with his speed and his aerials and his projectiles, but he can struggle to kill, and unlike Young Link, which I think is losing, the game is a lot slower pace, so Peach can kind of pull a turnip whenever she wants, and just kind of edgeguard Toon Link and edgeguard Toon Link pretty well. He has the same issues as Young Link, but the game's a lot slower, and it's easier to play around his bomb confirms, because they're more reactable, I think. But yeah, Peach kind of just outclasses Toon Link overall, and can play around his projectiles pretty well. He's just overall worse Young Link, but he doesn't do that bad, honestly. So, unlike Young Link, which I think does better, his projectiles are much more rapid. I think he has better speed and boxing tools versus Peach, but he has kind of the same disadvantage state. This matchup, overall, how it works is Young Link just like walls you out in neutral. Neutral's like hell to get around, but stuff like ground floor aerials clanking with projectiles are really helpful. So you kind of just get hit a lot. You're kind of getting beat up a lot in neutral. And then you hit Young Link once, and he just explodes. So it's similar to the other two Links, where you can always just hit them and kill them. But I think Toon Link's neutral is definitely more doable because it's slower pace, and the playing around the bombs and his up-close tools is easier than these two. But yeah, Two, Young Link's kill confirms work pretty well on Peach. Young Link can kind of just mash on Peach in a lot of spots, and there's not too much you can do about it. But the reason that's not losing is because he's a glass cannon. He can always get hit and edge guarded. His ledge options are also not that good because he's very slow in the air, and he can also struggle to kill. So he's another zoner that can just kind of struggle to kill Peach, and you can always make a comeback on him. But his neutral and his kill confirms are just so effective versus Peach that it's just hard for Peach to really get around that because she's so slow. But yeah, don't be afraid to clank with ground float aerials against him. Versus these three, it's all about pressuring them at that mid-range and using Peach's bigger hitboxes to kind of pressure them. And dash attack is also good as a burst option there too. But yeah, you can also pressure them in their blind spot at an angle, but I think Young Link's neutral, like I said, his neutral and advantage state are just so much better than these two versus Peach. Almost there. I'm going to talk about the last few zoners in even slash losing. We're going to talk about Pac-Man and Min and Villager. So these are characters where Peach is so slow, right, that she can't really stop these characters from setting up what they want to do in neutral. So against Villager, I'm going to talk about him first. Unlike Isabelle, Villager wants to kind of set up Lloyd in neutral and then wall you out with forward airs, set up tree, and then, kind of go from there. And Peach is too slow to really stop that because Villager struggles against rushdown characters like Palutena and Croy, because they can always just rush him down in neutral and stop him from pulling Lloyd for free. But Peach can't do that. She's too slow. So Villager can just pull Lloyd whenever he wants, and then he can start walling with forward airs. Another big thing is, why I think it's losing, is because Villager can camp under the platform with a tree, and Peach just kind of has to hold that. She doesn't have a way around the tree, and she kind of just has to wait. So Villager can camp Peach pretty well, stuff her out in the air, and if you ever go low, then Villager can just hit you with Bully Ball and kill you. So he has a lot better kill power compared to Isabelle. This is a matchup I played a lot, and what I will say is it's not that bad. It's similar to Samus where the first time you play it, it just feels horrible, but the more you play it, back air is extremely good in this matchup, similar to Isabelle, because you can wall out the Nair up close. Back air, rising back air is good against to just clank with this stuff. You have to remember, fair you can clank with, so you can throw turnip while you're jumping to stop him from anti-airing you with fair, or use a rising back air against him to slowly close the distance versus him, because you always want to be at that distance where he can't pull Lloyd for free versus you, and you can pressure him pretty hard up close. I also think stuff like parry into axe is really scary that Isabelle doesn't have access to, so boxing with him can be a little more risky compared to Isabelle, because he can just kill you with axe. So the kill power definitely helps Villager. And of course he can wall you out in the air. But yeah, back air is really good. Full hop float is really good in this matchup because Villager has a very obvious blind spot. Even though fair covers a lot of horizontal space, you can just full hop over it and use platforms to kind of close the distance versus him. But yeah, axe is super good at just calling Peach out in certain spots, which I think is very helpful for him, especially ledge trapping, because ledge trapping is better with tree. But yeah, overall, it's really not that bad. You can keep Villager in disadvantage because his recovery doesn't have a hitbox. You can just go down there and hit him. Turnips are good because he's gonna zone you. You always have a chance to pull turnip, kind of close the gap. Shield is pretty good, and always expect fair from ledge. You can use stuff like Toad against fair from ledge versus him, and I think his planking is a little bit better too because of Lloyd. So. Yeah, his game plan, because Peach is so slow, he can kind of set up whatever he wants, but it's not that bad because Peach's hitboxes are just so good versus Villager. Stuff like rising down air can also be good just to clank with fair. So the key is definitely while you're closing the gap, have a hitbox active to throw out like back air, rising down air, or turnip to kind of clank with the forward air and catch his landings too. Pac-Man, same thing. He can set up Hydrant and charge because Peach is slow, but I think this matchup might be even the more I play it. But a lot of Peach players kind of complain about this matchup, and I can see why. Pac-Man can camp you pretty well and set up on you. Stuff like Galaxian, even though Pac-Man doesn't have air mobility to really get out Peach's pressure, Galaxian is a good way to just kind of get around Peach's ledge trapping. You have to respect it because it covers a lot of space. And he's basically like a young Link with chic frame data. It's the best way I can describe it. I'm going to move it right here just to see. So Pac-Man is basically a young Link with chic frame data. So he can actually box you. If the Pac-Man knows when to camp and box with you, it can be really hard. Because like Fair can anti-air, but like every other zoner we've been talking about, he has a blind spot. So you can really air camp him in this matchup. It's really similar to Snape, where you can avoid a lot of his ground tools with float. And another interesting thing is Peach's damage output is just good enough to where you can just hit Hydrant away. So ground float Nair does enough damage to get rid of Hydrant in one hit. Ground float Fair is really good. You can also wall out Pac-Man. He doesn't have that much range, which is interesting. And if you ever get the fruit, you can camp with it. Similar to like Rob Gyro, Diddy Banana, Mega Man Metal Blade. Similar to those characters where you can just kind of hold his fruit and camp him with your float and hitboxes and still play the game. So Peach definitely has a lot of tools you can work with in this matchup. You can also edgeguard Pat. There's a few creative ways you can do it. You can toad his side B. And you can also like throw turnip on the trampoline. And there's a lot of tricky stuff you can do against to edgeguard him, which is why I'm like, I think it's even. Pac-Man can also struggle to kill, but Pac-Man can just set up kind of whatever he wants against Peach because Peach is so slow. He has to play it super passive. Pac-Man can time you out super effectively if he knows how to box with you and when to camp with you. So it's definitely here, but it's really not that bad. I think Peach has a lot of tools. It's just a really complicated matchup where you need to know all the ins and outs versus Pac. Peach's hitboxes can also wall out Pac pretty well, but yeah, it's definitely a lot easier than you think it would. Auto cancel side B goes over the Hydrant into his blind spot. Shield is also good versus Pac-Man because his grab is slow. Expect grab out of the corner, but yeah, his smash attacks are good at catching. His grab and smash attacks are good at catching Peach's landings. But yeah, it's not that bad. I think the more optimization that goes into this matchup, I can see it being even. But Pac-Man's ability to kind of time out Peach and his boxing tools are just really effective. And I can see it being here. Definitely one of my favorite matchups to play. It's just so... Once you know all the tricks and how to use his tools against him, it's really fun. Min. Oh yeah, and stuff like up B and Nair and Galaxian being able to escape Peach's pressure is another big deal. Even for a zoner, that's really big. Min. Cap, if you ever get hit by Min, good luck landing. She has so much range to call you out for pulling turnip in neutral. Just like I said, it's just so hard to land versus this character. But you can play a game similar to Jigglypuff, where you just always stay in her blind spot and slowly approach. And once you get up close, you can box with her because, you know, Peach's aerials are pretty safe on shield. You just have to play around the Nair. But it's just like, it can snowball very quickly because of Min's ability to just like not let you land and then just like edge guard you with her long arms. So her range just kind of like is really hard for Peach to deal with. Because she's so slow, it's not like characters like Sheik or Greninja or Zero Suit where they can just kind of get in on her very quickly at that angle. Peach has to be more creative than that. But there's definitely a lot of things you can do against Min. You can do float plus air dodge. You can do auto cancel side B to get into her blind spot. And her disadvantage state is so bad that you can always just hit her and kill her. So that's the only reason it's not like here. But yeah, it's just, oh my god, it feels like an uphill battle, especially online. Just hard to land. You have to slowly close the gap, similar to Mega Man. And then if you get hit, it just snowballs very quickly. But it can also snowball for her because her disadvantage state is bad. She struggles to land. Yeah. Also, up air goes through Hydrant. Forgot to mention that. Let's go over some... As for some even zoners, let's go over these. I think Duck Hunt, Belmont, and Mii Gunner. Oops. And Mii Gunner. So these are characters where what saves you is their weaknesses, because they're not too great. So let's go over each of these. So Duck Hunt, can struggle to kill. He has a really good neutral versus Peach, right? Gunman, the Frisbee, the can, the usual. But what really saves you is his up close tools are really bad. He has a poor disadvantage state, and he can sometimes struggle to kill, which is really big against Peach. Because if you can't kill Peach as a zoner, then that means she's more likely to hit you and close the gap, and then end up making a comeback against you, which is really big. Stuff like mid-range float is very important in this matchup, if you've seen the Duck Hunt VOD, because you can avoid stuff like Frisbee and the Gunman. You want to just avoid pulling too many turnips versus Duck Hunt, because he can trap you pretty well. Auto-cancel side B is pretty good as a mix-up. You can cross Duck Hunt up. You want to read what he does up close. A lot of the times, most Duck Hunts up close, and if you pressure them, back air is really good because he doesn't have too many answers to deal with that. So they end up jumping and naring. And similar to Sheik and Fox, around kill percent, you can just read them with the up smash up close, which is super, super good. But yeah, if you don't let Duck Hunt hit you with Frisbee, and you don't get greedy in disadvantage versus up air and his smash attacks, it's really hard for him to kill you, which is a big deal. And he has a really poor disadvantage state. Shield can be okay. You just have to like slowly approach and see what he does after he throws a projectile. This is a big thing. But yeah, his weaknesses as a mid tier really help you from keeping it from being here. He also has an angle problem where if he doesn't have can, you can pressure him at that angle and use float, and it's really good. Platforms are also super good against him. And you can always recover high over the ledge traps, similar to Richter and Mii Gunner. So Richter is a matchup where I kind of went back and forth about this because I've played some really good Richters, like Dark Falcon, Yosefu, and, you know. So overall it feels here. Some days it feels here. I definitely love playing this matchup. So I think it's just even because Peach players are pretty split on this, but how I see it is Richter has really good tools to control the air with whip disjoints, and he can catch Peach's landings pretty well with stuff like F tilt and cross. But it's not like Young Link, where his projectiles are rapid enough to where you're kind of forced to approach or do something about it. He can control a lot of space, but Peach's full hop movement's really good at like mid to far range to kind of move around the whip and slowly close the gap. And then once you're up close, you want to bait up B and just play around up B pretty much, and his nair. And focus on trying to keep stage control in this matchup, because the more stage you have behind you, the better. And if you lose those RPS situations, then if you have more stage around you, it's not as bad. So similar to Sheik Fox, in Mega Man, where you're gonna be losing neutral more, but Peach's hits matter way more because you can always hit Richter and edge guard him. Very slow in the air, very exploitable recovery. You can always just hit him and kill him. You have better damage output than Richter, which is good. And it's just very fragile. It's similar to Link, where you can always make a comeback on this character, like Link or Chrom, where they have better neutral, but you can always make a comeback on him. And you have a few tools in neutral as well. Stuff like Run Up Shield is super good. Fair is really good in this matchup for not only hitting Richter in his blind spot, but it can also low profile his F tilt if he tries to catch your landing, which is super important. Turn-ups are really good. I think I mentioned float. And Peach is similar to Cloud. Your tools are just safe enough to where you can play around the up B. Be ready for... One thing you want to avoid is definitely be ready for like Holy Water off a platform and ledge. That's something you want to cover. And just overall play patient until you get that hit. Richter can also struggle to kill. So if he doesn't like get the ledge trap against you, he can struggle to kill, and that's more of a chance for you to just hit him once and just blow him up because his recovery is so bad. So while Richter has good neutral, a lot of his weaknesses, like his blind spot, he's not very mobile or fast, and just like his really poor disadvantage that he gets juggled too. It just really help Peach. You can maneuver around his projectiles pretty well with your movement. So like walking into shield's pretty good against him. But yeah, I'd say this one's pretty even overall. Peach also has really good burst options with like auto cancel side B against Richter to just always like make it hard for him, and he won't always be safe at that mid to far range. I know Razo is really good at this matchup because he's played against like T3 Dom and Nitro, and it seemed pretty even overall. But yeah, I think overall it's just even. He's a mid-tier that does well against Peach, but he has really bad weaknesses. It's definitely a matchup check, for sure. Mii Gunner's the same way, where you can always move around him at that angle. Peach's hitboxes are really good at hitting back the grenade, stuff like back air, and Mii Gunner doesn't have that much range up close. She has good ledge trapping, but similar to Richter and Duck Hunt, you can always recover high over it, which is really nice as Peach, or recover under the ledge, under the stage, and go to the other side, which is pretty good. But yeah, it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of what I've seen. Like, these Mii characters are just kind of worse versions of other characters. But yeah, the charge shot's not as threatening. You can definitely play around the grenades a lot pretty well with your hitboxes. Turnips are really good. It's a matchup you have to play pretty passive and slow and just abuse that angle. And you outbox Mii Gunner up close. Mii Gunner also doesn't have a great recovery. So if you hit her, you can just kind of edge guard her pretty well too. So not much to say there. It's annoying at first, but use the grenades, hit back the grenades, use turnips, play patient, abuse that blind spot, edge guard her, pressure up close. But she has good neutral too. So you can't just hold forward. I'm going to go over Pokemon Trainer and Steve, because these matchups are matchups where on paper they seem like they're winning, right? But in practice, the more I play them, the more I kind of realize that they have more chances to kind of cheese Peach. So how Steve works and Pokemon Trainer works is you can kind of air camp them somewhat well. So against Steve, one thing that's really big is Peach's ground flow aerials are really good at hitting blocks away. And it's hard for Peach to react to stuff like ground flow back air against blocks. It creates kind of this 50-50 scenario where Steve has to kind of read you hitting the block or not. You can air camp Steve because, again, he's not very fast in the air. His jump height is really poor. So that's pretty good for him. I mean, that's pretty good for Peach. She can kind of maneuver around him in the air. Pressure and condition him to shield with turnips. And you can also hit him out of minecart with some of Peach's moves. But the thing is, like, Peach isn't fast enough to stop Steve from not mining, and he also has a really good advantage state on Peach, to where if you mess up, you can die as early as like 40 when you need to hit Steve more times. You can edge guard him, but it's like Steve has quite a few mix-ups he can do off stage, and his ledge trapping's a little bit better than yours. So it's similar to Richter, where you have better edge guarding tools, but Steve has better ledge trapping tools, which is good. But you get to hit Steve so many more times, and he can always just kind of read you with a smash attack or a minecart and kill you just extremely early. So theoretically, it's like here, but in practice, it's here. Same with Pokemon Trainer. Pokemon Trainer you can keep in disadvantage pretty well. You have options versus all three of the Pokemon. Squirtle you wall out with back air. It's really hard for Squirtle to deal with back air. Can also float above his back air range and avoid his ground game. And again, Peach doesn't really care about small characters because of her ground flow back air. Down air is good, and PT is so slow, similar to Steve, that you can always pull turnip pretty much whenever you want, and keep Pokemon Trainer in the corner, which is a big deal. Against Ivysaur, again, he's another zoner where he really struggles against Peach floating at that angle and not holding forward. And you can pressure his shield somewhat well as long as you play around the Nair. But Ivysaur is pretty annoying because he can kind of wall Peach out. But Peach definitely has the tools with like mid-range float and turnips because Ivysaur's not that fast. So where you can kind of poke at him. But Peach is so slow that Squirtle and Ivysaur can play neutral. You're not like a Mario or a Roy where you can kind of rush down and pressure PT and to kind of dictate the pace versus him. And then Charizard wants to shield camp you, but we already know. Peach's aerials are so safe, you can cross them up. But Charizard can cheese you pretty hard, and he takes advantage of the fact that it's similar to Rob and Yoshi, where if you don't kill PT, then they can cheese you. And Ivysaur's advantage state is pretty good versus Peach. He can juggle you with up airs. If you're really careless off stage, he can do side B into like up B or some aerial, or he can hit you with the downer. So you want to use float off stage as a way to stall against 2 frames. But yeah, Ivysaur's advantage state's pretty good, and yeah, they can kill you a lot earlier than you can kill them. Even though Peach is really good at keeping PT in disadvantage because they don't have the best ledge options to escape and not very fast, right? That it could be really hard to escape, but they can just kill you so early and live forever because of Charizard. So I think it's just even. Ivysaur is annoying enough to where it's even, but in theory, it's like here, but in practice, I just feel like it's here overall, the more I played it. But you can always pull Turnip whenever you want. Peach's hitboxes are really good versus all 3 of the Pokemon, as well as Float. Well, you have to play more grounded versus Charizard because of back air. But disadvantage versus these 2 scared characters is so scary. Even if you have good neutral tools versus them. It's like, in theory you win, but in practice, I think it's even. Let's see. Let's go over Byleth. Byleth is even. And we're only down to 3 characters. So Byleth is even. So this is a matchup where, again, Byleth is pretty slow, not very fast in the air. So you can pull Turnip whenever you want. But unlike Corrin, he can always kind of wall you with stuff like forward air and back air. And Nair is really good up close. So unlike Ike or Corrin, he actually has a way to escape Peach's buttons when you're pressuring him, which is pretty good. But it's really hard for Byleth to approach if you're holding a Turnip. And you can edge guard him, which is pretty good. But Byleth's advantage state is pretty good versus Peach. He can juggle you extremely well. His up air is really big. Dash attack's really good. And stuff like side B is really good at edge guarding Peach off stage. So that's really good. So Byleth can actually threaten you off stage because he has good range. But it's a stalemate matchup. If you ever see Numeki versus LY or Riziasu, I think, that's like a perfect example of how to play the matchup. Peach can kind of float in certain spots above Byleth and use Turnip against him and cross him up and pressure Byleth pretty well. I'd say ground float forward air is pretty good in this matchup because you can low profile the fair while also hitting him and also outranging the Nair. And Turnip's really good. I already talked about edge guarding him. So I think overall it's even, but it's annoying. I could be here, but I think Byleth's disadvantage state, you can juggle him pretty well. And the fact that you have Turnips, safe on shield aerials, and Peach's Herbox shifting is also amazing in this matchup, so you can low profile his stuff. And I think Sephiroth is harder. Sephiroth is a character where he can wall Peach out. It's similar to Byleth, where he has really good aerials. He doesn't have the Nair. It's so fast, but it's not like a multi-hit, you know? But I think Sephiroth's wing and disadvantage state and ability to edge guard Peach a lot better is what keeps it here. It's definitely not bad, because Sephiroth doesn't throw out many hitboxes compared to something like Martha Musina, to where he can kind of just wall you out. So the neutral is actually surprisingly okay. But in disadvantage, it's similar to Game & Watch, where you get hit, Sephiroth can juggle you, so you drift off stage, but he can edge guard you, so you have to avoid the edge guard. You have to snap ledge, but he has stuff like down air counter and F-tilt to really get you there. And then you have to get past Sephiroth's ledge trapping. So it's an uphill battle in disadvantage. While he's in disadvantage, he has wing to recover high over your ledge traps. He has better mobility. So it's a matchup that feels even until he gets wing, which is why it's here. And he also has good options off of ledge with counter and his forward air to just kind of disrupt a lot of Peach's ledge traps. So you don't want to overextend versus characters like Sephiroth and Yoshi that have good options to get out of the corner. Just be ready for counter. Can't really mash on Sephiroth that hard when he's in the ledge, so you don't want to overextend there. Also, Bale's another one where you can't overextend. But yeah, it's a very patient matchup. Peach's Herbox shifting, similar to Byleth. You can kind of duck under a lot of his stuff. Float plus air dodge is something I've kind of failed to mention for some of these matchups, like Byleth, Palutena, Sephiroth, Cloud. It could be okay. Where if you know when they're going to throw out an aerial, you can float plus air dodge through it and then kind of whiff punish them, which is a really good tool to have against these characters. And you can also, similar to Cloud, you can throw out a poke and then shield. And it's really good versus them because if you're holding a Turnip and they hit your shield, because Peach shifts her box towards them, you shield, they miss-space their aerial now, and then you punish them with a turnip out of shield, and it kind of goes from there. But yeah, Sephiroth's not that bad. It's just like, once he gets wing, it's like, oh my god. And then getting at a disadvantage kind of sucks. But it's a matchup I played a lot. Because there's like 3 friends that I know of that I've played that named Sephiroth, and I've played against them a lot. But yeah, it's definitely a difficult matchup for sure. Sephiroth juggles you and keeps you in disadvantage pretty well. As for the last, actually I'm gonna save Zero Suit for last. We already know where both of these go. Sora's even. So Sora's a pretty even matchup. It's kind of annoying because he can wall you out. His juggling's pretty good versus Peach, but Peach doesn't really have to approach, and you kill Sora a lot earlier, which is good. If you watch like Umeki versus Zachary, that kind of shows like how to play the matchup. Peach can anti-air Sora pretty well. Turnip out of shield's pretty good versus Sora. Sora's buttons are pretty good, but yeah, it's kind of a patient stalemate matchup between the two. I don't have too much to say, but Sora can juggle Peach, but you can keep him in disadvantage pretty well because he dies so early, which is very helpful for Peach. Well, you also have good anti-airs versus him in neutral. So you don't want to overextend versus Sora, and you want to be very careful of his juggling. But stuff like turnip into shield, Peach's anti-airs, and Peach's just general movement, just based around Sora's hitboxes are good because he's very slow. And we all know not being fast versus Peach is just not very good. As for the last matchup, Zero Suit is here. I could see it being here, but the more I think about it and the more I play it, I think Zero Suit just ends up being here. So the issue with this matchup is Zero Suit is very fast. So Zero Suit can flex her mobility all over you. Her general game plan against a lot of characters is to kind of maneuver around them with her box shifting, her mobility, to make her very difficult for characters to hit. And Peach is no exception. She's so slow. And similar to like Fox and Sheik, she can always play at that range to kind of pressure you for pulling turnip. Zera's the disjoint, so she can kind of wall you out. But interestingly enough, Peach can box with Zero Suit quite well. Zero Suit's out of shield's not that great. And Peach has better hitboxes to kind of trade with Zero Suit and anti-air her, which is important. So you can actually so this matchup's kind of a stalemate where both characters are camping. You have turnips, she has Zera, and she's on a platform. But Zero Suit's mobility kind of just edges her out compared to something like Diddy Kong. And Zero Suit's disadvantage is also better, so she can kind of like just flip kick over you if you overextend when pressuring her. But another thing, I think what keeps it from being here is Zero Suit can kind of struggle to kill. And your hitboxes are I think your hits matter more. Peach's hits matter more compared to Zero Suit's. So that's very helpful. But yeah, the thing is she has better mobility. She can platform camp you with the lead. On stages like Kalos, it's really hard to kind of deal with that. So yeah, overall her mobility is there, but it's even. The more I play it, Peach can kind of just hold her own because your hits matter more. You can anti-air her pretty well. Turnip out of shield's ridiculous, but yeah. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, similar to Luigi, she can just kind of, if you can't really recover high because her full hop and mobility kind of just calls you out there. So you kind of just want to go low and use ground and use up there under the stage if she tries to challenge you. You can also die really early because Zero Suit's corner pressure, ledge trapping isn't that great. You can play really patient at ledge. She doesn't have the best tools to hit ledge hang, similar to the Shotos. But her corner pressure she can kind of just like nair flip kick versus you. But the neutral's not that bad. As long as you play for stage control, box with Zero Suit, know when to trade, know how to maneuver around her, and don't overly rely on pulling turnips and playing around the Zera. This is another one where, even though it's a long horizontal hitbox, you can float plus air dodge like right through it, which is pretty good, and punish her. But yeah, her mobility and ability to just like catch Peach's landings with their anti-airs and just anti-air Peach. She's a fast character with good anti-airs, and that's always good versus Peach, as we've kind of been seeing. But yeah, this is kind of Peach's matchup chart, and this is kind of how I feel about all of her matchups, and I hope you enjoyed this VOD.